Welcome to the IDP Plus Advice Show. Today we're going to continue as we started last week. We're going to go through week 2 IDP snap counts, IDP defensive player alignments and positioning. We're going to talk about injuries, resulting waiver impacts, trade targets, etc. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Ricky Rodriguez. You can find me on X at RickyRod66. I'm joined once again by the IDP expert extraordinaire, Mr. Shawn Teague, who you can find at Shawn8386 on X as well. We're thrilled to be with you here, recording the night of Tuesday, September 16th, which will be released on Wednesday, the 17th in the morning. And we're going to share some thoughts for what we've got out of week 2 and for week 3 and beyond. As I mentioned in the opening, we're going to do IDP snap counts. We're going to talk about defensive player alignments and positioning, injuries, etc. So glad to be with you here again this week. Of course, if you missed our previous episodes, any of them, you can certainly find those on the IDP Plus YouTube channel and find IDP Advice within that and on Spotify as well. And we've had, I don't know about you, Shawn, but I've had a lot of great fun with all the people that are putting comments and questions into the YouTube show itself. And you and I have been going there on a regular basis and starting to build some relationships with some good followers, right, Shawn?
Yeah. Fun interactions, some really good questions, and then just some fun comments in there. And we're not the only ones answering some of these questions, too. So it's good to see everybody kind of jumping in, helping each other out in here.
Exactly. So be sure and put your comments, your questions about the show, players, you name it, into there, and we will definitely follow up as the week continues on. All right, with that, let's get started with the AFC East, and we'll start with the Buffalo Bills. Of course, they had a bit of a blowout against the Jets, and whenever there's blowout games, I always want to be careful in terms of some of the takeaways, and particularly maybe some wrong takeaways because of snap count. In this case, the Bills only played 47 snaps on defense. For those that listened last week, or if you may not recall, or if you're new to the show, on average, teams play about 63 and a half snaps on defense. So 47 is extremely low. And as a result, as you would expect, some of the numbers and snap counts were low. So you had Terrell Bernard only playing 37 snaps, which is only 79% of the snaps. Now, Matt Milano played 49% of the snaps only, but he did leave for an injury. He didn't practice on Monday, did not practice on Tuesday. With him being out, Dorian Williams picked up the slack, playing 64% of the snaps. So he's the linebacker 3 in Buffalo, and he's the one you want to target if you need a Milano replacement. He's specifically looking for Buffalo. And Joe Andreessen, also known as Buffalo Joe. Some of you may have seen that in Hard Knocks if you weren't aware about that from last year. Buffalo Joe stepped in to the snaps that Terrell Bernard didn't play. On the defensive line, Bosa and Epinesa played 55% of the snaps. Russo played 53%. I'll let Shawn talk about those percentages here in a second. But moving into the secondary real quick. Cole Bishop did play 100% of the snaps. He played 62% of those deep. The week before, he only played 53%, and we're wondering if that was going to last. And the reason was they played Derrick Henry and the Ravens the week before, and we thought they might have him a lot more in the box as a result. In at least based on this week, him having played 100% of the snaps, he played an extra 9% of the snaps deep, so 60% deep. Not something we're excited about from a IDP perspective. Taylor Rapp played 59% of his snaps deep. The week before, he only played 49% deep. So similar on the whole Derrick Henry situation there. Now, Terrell Bernard and Taylor Rapp basically went out of the game at the same time, both only playing 79% of the snaps. Now, Shawn, I did want to go back to you as we're talking about the Bills here. You had an interesting comment right before the show about the snap counts for Buffalo as well, in addition to the blowout. Why don't you share it with our audience?
Yeah, with part of it just being low snap counts again, the blowouts, even going back to last week, not good snaps there. Just again, blowouts, just weird game script. So we're not seeing a whole lot of snaps there. But with this game being out of hand, they decided to rest Bernard and short week, so they definitely want to keep him healthy. And looking at this defensive line, you see a lot of 50% of the snaps here, a little more rotation with these guys. They pull those guys again. It's short week, so I think this was done to help preserve those guys, especially when you have a guy like Joey Bosa who's injury prone. It's good to get him out when you can.
Right. And when Shawn says short week, of course, the Bills are playing the Dolphins in this Thursday night window here. And with the blowout, made perfect sense to rest them. So as you're looking ahead, though, Matt Milano not expected to play at this point in time, having missed Monday and Tuesday's practices, if you call them a practice. Ed Oliver also not expected to play. Teron Johnson is questionable. So early with the short window for getting ready, I would lean toward he's more on the doubtful, not likely to play than likely to play, being he didn't play this past Sunday.
Yeah, Ed Oliver is supposed to be a long term injury, or not long term, but it's supposed to last a couple weeks here. And then I'd be a little nervous starting Dorian Williams outside of deep leagues. Again, it's the Dolphins who have not been giving up a lot of snap counts to opposing defenses. So he's a good option to pick up. I'm worried about what kind of snaps he's going to get to play, and we may see another down week for him and possibly Bernard as well.
Great call out, Shawn. And then last thing on the Bills before we move to the Patriots, with Terrell Bernard, a lot of our listeners or viewers drafted him top 10, top 12 linebacker. These first 2 weeks haven't exactly been robust for him yet. Are we panicking yet and throwing in the towel? Or we're still being patient on Terrell Bernard?
I'm still being patient with Terrell Bernard. I'm right there with you guys. Took him in quite a few leagues as well. So, but looking at the matchups, I think it's eventually going to start getting better. Um, Again, I'm not convinced it's going to be this week. So if you do have a better option, a more certain option, he's not a must start. So feel free to bench him, but I'm not ready to drop him just yet.
Correct. And to your point that you just made, the Patriots play the Dolphins. The Patriots only played 57 snaps in defense against the Dolphins, once again below the normal average, because the Dolphins are either quick strike or punting kind of thing. It feels like
They're awful, Ricky.
yeah. But since that's your team, I'm trying to be a little bit more polite, okay? But even with 57 snaps, Robert Spillane played 98% of those snaps in linebacker, but had another less than exciting ball game in terms on the stat side of things, with only 3 tackles for the second week in a row. Now he did pick up a sack, luckily, which helped his stats. But in general, 3 tackles 2 weeks in a row. When you have Christian Ellis for the second week in a row, only playing about 74% of the snaps. Last week he played 70%, but coming up with 8 combined tackles, of which 5 were solo. Shawn, we just talked about Bernard. Spillane, I think we're maybe a little bit more nervous about Spillane than Bernard right now.
Absolutely. He's going to he left Vegas. So this is a new scheme. Whereas Buffalo, this is the same scheme for them. That's why I'm a little less nervous about Bernard. Spillane's in this newer system, and we're seeing the effects here. He's just not producing the numbers we were used to playing for Patrick Graham over there in Vegas. And he's missing a lot of tackles. No matter, different sites show different numbers for missed tackles, but they're all showing plenty for Spillane. So we're looking at, some say 4 already this season, some are saying 8. So that's a lot of missed tackles. So he's having some technical issues, and just adjusting to this new scheme is causing some a big decrease in production for us. So yes, definitely panic.
But we're not dropping him.
Not dropping him
We're probably benching him.
for sure.
We're benching him this week. And we're going to give you a lot of names throughout the show for you to consider and look at your, who's available on waivers / ad drops to help you out. But right now, we have no problem putting Spillane on the bench. And As Shawn pointed out so well last week, Christian Ellis also has defensive line eligibility on sleeper, if I remember correctly, right,
Yep.
Shawn?
Yep.
And so 8 tackles as a defensive line, we want that all day. Okay, moving to the edge position, Harold Landry, his snap count went up from 76% to 91% this past week. Kayvon Chason went up from 70% to 82%. Keon White went from 46% to big fat 0. And Anthony Jennings actually got some snaps. He went to 19%. So Harold Landry now has, I believe it's 3.5 sacks over the first 2 games, which is fantastic. Kayvon Chason has 1 sack, so 1.5 sacks, excuse me, right now. So that's what's happening on the edge side of things. We're playing Harold Landry for sure. Kayvon Chason in your deeper leagues, I mean, much deeper leagues, is someone just to keep an eye on. At the defensive tackle position or interior defensive line, Bournemore 67% of the snaps, Milton Williams 69% of the snaps. So some good solid numbers there for interior defensive linemen. Going to the secondary, Craig Woodson played 93% of the snaps. Jalen Hawkins played 98% of the snaps. What's interesting about this, though, Hawkins played 95% of his snaps deep, but yet he had 8 tackles to tie for the team lead. Craig Woodson played 68% of the snaps deep. He had 6 combined tackles, 4 solo, 2 assisted. So when you hear me say combined, just for everybody, for the audience, that's a combination of solo plus assisted tackles, for those that might not be aware. Last week, Shawn, you made the statement that you still want Hawkins over Woodson because he's making plays even though he's playing deep, but 95% deep. The week before was only 68. Are you still feeling comfortable with Hawkins?
Absolutely. He also had an interception called back. So that was another big play that almost happened. Yeah, I'm comfortable with Hawkins. I really am. Just the way this defense is, they're allowing teams are having to throw deep to kind of catch up or keep these games up so far, being the Raiders and Dolphins. So he's definitely getting the tackles. Now, if we come into a maybe run heavy team, we might adjust that week. But for now, I'm firing him up.
Yeah, keep the matchups in mind. Run heavy teams will want to be careful. But what part of the reason I wanted to highlight the deep percentage, because we're going to talk about Aloy Gilman a little bit later, and that'll be a counterpoint to this one here as we go forward. All righty. That's going to take us next to the Jets. The Jets, as you might expect, if the Bills played so little snaps, the Jets defense was on the field quite a bit, and they were with 75 snaps. And that's more like it to Jamien Sherwood, who had 13 combined tackles this week after only having 6 in week 1. So excited to see him getting off the schneid. Quincy Williams, though, boy, I tell you what, for 75 snaps and only getting 5 tackles, a little bit disappointed there. Moving to the defensive line, Jermaine Johnson left the game with an injury. Brandon McGregor was the one who picked up the slack with 4 combined tackles, and he played 49% of the snaps. But Michael Clemens played 56% of the snaps, didn't do much again this week with only 2 assisted tackles. Will McDonald, who had 2 sacks in week 1, put up a big fat goose egg on 53% of the snaps. So very disappointing. I have some happiness for Will McDonald for a full year, but very disappointed in this outing. He did put a little bit of meat on the bones, put a little bit more lead in his pants, for lack of a better term, this year. Still has the speed. Love the sacks we saw last week, but boy, disappointing to coming up with a 0. Your thoughts on Will McDonald, Shawn?
Yeah, looking at his stats last year, he was more boomer bust. He didn't offer a very good tackle floor. This is what happens. They get sacks or no sacks. Without the tackle numbers, you're more liable to get these goose eggs. So you just got to ride that wave.
So moving to the Jets secondary real quick, we have Michael Carter II was their primary slot person. He did leave the game injured, and it really wasn't clear in terms of who really is going to step into that role as a number 3 cornerback. So it's something, the slot cornerback, was something we'll have to watch. There are some other injuries as well, the secondary, which kind of muddied the waters in terms of that determination. Tony Adams only played 36% of the snaps before he left the game injured. He was replaced by the rookie from Alabama, Malachi Moore, who played the other 64% of the snaps, totaling obviously to 100. See how that works? So that was a like-for-like switch out. When Malachi Moore was in there, he played 42% of his snaps deep is all. Tony Adams had only played 33% of his snaps deep. Andre Cisco, who played 100% of the snaps, played 49% of the snaps deep. Now, if you look at the week before, Cisco played 71% deep, so moving up to 49% deep is a significant improvement. And it showed up a little bit in his stat line with him coming up with 6 combined tackles. Shawn, are you interested if Adams is out? Are you interested in Malachi Moore?
In deep leagues, yeah. Yeah, because I think these numbers will actually switch again. I think Cisco will drop back to playing deep again. I think this was more the opponent this week trying to stop the run game, and the game was out of hand, so he could move up a little bit. There was no need for them to throw deep, so no need for him to play as deep. So I think Malachi Moore will be more in that box slot up near the line of scrimmage role. But I'm willing to take that chance in a deep league. Shallow league, I'm probably still looking elsewhere.
I'm with you on that. And you're right. The Bills threw, I believe it was about roughly 150 yards. I don't know if you heard Josh Allen's quote today, trying to make fun about his nose and so forth. He said he's trying to join the Boza brothers.
Oh, right.
I thought that was quite funny. All right, let's wrap up the AFC East and talk about the Dolphins, who played 60 snaps against the Patriots. Good news is Tyrell Dodson and Jordan Brooks basically played all the snaps. So that was fantastic news. Both of them are averaging 11 tackles per game, which is phenomenal news for both of those gentlemen. So as long as they're playing about 100% of the snaps and getting those kind of tackles, fire them up, folks. We're having them in the lineups. We talked about in preseason, we thought Brooks would finish as a linebacker 1 type and Tyrell Dodson as a linebacker 2. And they're both clearly on track for hitting both of those, and Dodson maybe even potentially higher than we thought. Willie Gay actually got some snaps on defense. The much heralded Willie Gay got a total of 3 snaps on defense. So we're not rushing to the waiver wire for Willie Gay. And so I'll just leave it at that. All right, moving to the defensive line. There was a little bit of shifting that was quite interesting in terms of playing time. Bradley Chubb was up to 63%. Jalen Phillips was up to 67%. So they're up 8 and 12% respectively in snaps. Chop Robinson was down to 40%. Matt Judon was 33%. So they were down roughly 11 to 12% respectively in terms of snaps. So very, very interesting. And then, of course, Chop Robinson did luckily get a sack. There was a great play where we saw Judon chasing Drake May, but not catching him during the game. At least he was giving a lot of effort. But with these kind of numbers, are you more comfortable playing Chubb and Phillips? As Chubb had 5 tackles and a sack, Jalen Phillips had 4 unassisted tackles. Are you more comfortable playing those 2, Shawn, or you'd like to see those numbers even a little bit higher?
A little more, and I think we will start to see them again increase probably a little more next week as well. Both these guys were coming off season-ending injuries last year, so they're kind of a slow ramp up, I guess, these first couple of weeks. So we may see them hit 70s, maybe even low 80s every now and then, depending on how the game is going and the matchups and whatnot. But yeah, I expect these guys to, as long as they're healthy, Chubb seems to be the one hitting home right now. So I would pick him up over Phillips. Phillips is more than likely to get hurt more than Chubb.
Well, Chubb has had his share of injuries too, but
true.
At least Chubb has had the full year to recover from his last injury. All right, so, or actually over a year from his last injury versus Phillips. So we're liking Bradley Chubb. Jalen Phillips, okay, but Chop Robinson and Judon are on the chopping block right now, for lack of a better
Yeah,
term.
yeah. I think Chop got hurt a little bit too, so he's a little banged up right now. I believe with a knee injury, if I'm not mistaken. So, you're
Okay.
definitely not starting him this week.
In my Excel spreadsheet where I track injuries during the games on Sunday, I had a list. I mean, of offense and defense. I can't tell you how long it is. I should have counted. I didn't actually have Chop Robinson on that list. So I missed that one. So thank you, Shawn, for calling that out. As we move to the secondary, the good news, Minka Fitzpatrick playing 100% of the snaps, and once again, only played 48% deep. And for Minka Fitzpatrick, that is fantastic news. And it shows up in his stats with having 8 tackles. He's averaging 8.5 tackles a game. We're on the Minka Fitzpatrick bandwagon. We talked about that last week. The other safety position, quite the mess. Melifonwu played 58% of the snaps, and wouldn't you know it, he got hurt again. Dante Trader played 33% of the snaps. And Ashton Davis actually got 23% of the snaps on defense as well, in some multiple safety looks here. But Melifon was constantly being hurt. We can't trust him. Even if he was playing 100%, the risk of him just getting hurt just seems so high every week. I don't want to put him in my lineups. Do you, Shawn?
No, absolutely not. And if you've watched any of the games, he's burnt toast out there. So he's probably not far from being benched anyway if he's not hurt. Just my guess. And we're seeing Trader gain some snaps here. Uh, this could be a switch that gets made anyway. It's still ugly. Fitzpatrick's the only one you can trust here. But yeah, stay away from the rest of these guys.
Exactly right. Now, that kind of wraps up the AFC East. We're going to move to the AFC North, but before we do, I want to remind everyone of our Start Sit show on Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, on this IDP Plus YouTube channel. They've actually put um, a lot of the graphics out there already for multiple weeks out into the future. You're going to be wanting to look for the week 3 because we're going into week 3. So look for the week 3 Start Sit on Sunday. Come join us. We're having a lot of fun. We're getting some great questions, sharing some education as well as part of it. Great feedback from our listeners all the way in from again from Barcelona, Spain. Once again, so come on out, join us. Start Sit Show 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central on Sunday morning. Okay, moving to the Ravens, who played 73 snaps against the Browns. So with that, Roquan Smith only played 90% because this was another game that was a blowout. But the good news in that 90%, it was welcome back, Roquan Smith. I think it was because we took some jabs at him last week, Shawn, that he took it to heart. He says, I got to play better because those guys on the IDP Plus Advice show are dogging me. I'm sure that's what happened.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no doubt.
Roquan had 15 combined tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits. He had a fumble return for a touchdown. So I was playing against him in one league, so I should have known something like this was going to happen. So that's what I get. Now he didn't play in the garbage time, so he did miss the last 7 snaps or so when they took him out. But was even more interesting for the Ravens is what was happening at another number 2 linebacker spot. There is no staying on this Trent Simpson bandwagon anymore. The wheels have broken. The horse has been set away from the buggy. It's done.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. It happened sooner than I thought it would.
yeah. So Teddy Buchanan played 82% of the snaps, the 4th-round rookie out of California. And to Shawn's point, it was something we've been monitoring throughout the offseason. We've been debating about how quickly this change would happen, but it started here in week 2 against the Browns. And look, this is a divisional game, not just any other game. This is a divisional game. The snaps that Trenton Simpson did play, he picked up the 7 snaps that Roquan Smith missed, and then the rest of the game he only had 8 snaps in total. Buchanan played 82%. So I'd like to see Buchanan maybe getting into the 85-90 range, which I think as he gets more experience will probably happen. And maybe if a game's not a blowout as well, as we go forward here. But Teddy Buchanan, we talked earlier about other linebacker names to pick up. Here's one for you to go and grab right now. Go grab Teddy Buchanan and add him to your bench. On the defensive line side of things, Kyle Van Noy left the game very early with the injury. He only played 12 snaps and only got one tackle. After that, it sort of became a three-person rotation instead of a four-person rotation with Van Noy being out of there. So it was Odafe Owe playing 56%, Mike Green 62%, and once again, Tavius Robinson leading the edge group of the Ravens with 66% of the snaps and coming up with 6 combined tackles and a sack on top of that. He is averaging 5.5 tackles a game along with that sack. Shawn, Tavius Robinson, we talked about it a little bit. We had him on the monitor list. Is he moving up that monitor list for you in terms of someone who's probably playable at this point, particularly with Van Noy out?
Yeah, more so in deep leagues, but yeah, he's definitely worth a pickup. I actually have a waiver claim out in one league. Of course, it's IDP only, and it's definitely a deep league. But yeah, he's definitely at the top of my list as far as edge rushers out there right now. Of course, pickings are slim, but shallow leagues probably still not. But keep an eye on him because I mean he's only ticking up, and Vinoy is looking to be out several weeks here.
That is correct. So we do like some Tavius Robinson. Now, Mike Green, even with that increase in snaps, only had 2 assisted tackles, did get a quarterback hit. It is hard for these rookies, particularly these rookie edge rushers, to make a big impact in week one. So don't get too excited going for him over someone like Tavius Robinson. Ironically, of those 3, Odafe Owe played the least amount of snaps of those 3 at 56%. Okay. And as a side note, he's only averaging 1 tackle per game.
Terrible.
That is not
Terrible.
good. That we don't want that. Find somebody else, folks. All right, moving to the secondary. Kyle Hamilton, he's just such a beast. I love watching him. I love like watching Derwin James. Love watching these guys. But once again, to my surprise, he still played 52% of the snaps deep after 51% the week before. But he's just so talented. He is usually makes plays. Now this week he only had 5 combined tackles and 1 tackle for loss, so not as robust, but we're still okay with him in that 50% range. Malachi Starks played even more deep safety this past week, 74% versus the 65% the week before. Similar to the discussion we had on Jalen Hawkins, though, he was still productive with 7 combined tackles. So not bad for that deep safety position, but I'm not counting on when they're playing, that percentage of the snaps deep, particularly for a rookie right now. Marlon Humphrey left the game injured. He played basically 96% of his snaps were basically along the D line in the box or in the slot, or like I like to say, close to the line. So if you hear me say close to the line, that means on the D line, in the box, or in the slot. For those that may have missed that last week when I covered that, he only had a couple of snaps out wide, did Marlon Humphrey, but he did leave the game injured. He was replaced by the undrafted rookie Keon Martin, who played all 22 of his snaps in the slot, nowhere else. Martin actually had 5 tackles in that short amount of time in 22 snaps. Now, I didn't get a chance to see, Shawn, if any of those were also special team tackles as well. But you might, in deep leagues, we're going to keep an eye on Keon Martin, depending on how long Humphrey's out, because we love that slot cornerback position. If he's playing 100% of the snaps there, that could be very viable. Right, Shawn?
I'm with you. Yep.
All right. All righty. I haven't gotten any word on Marlon Humphrey, so it's something we'll have to watch as the week progresses. Moving on to the Bengals, who played 71 snaps on defense against the Jaguars. This Bengal defense against good teams is going to be on the field a lot because their defense is still not so robust. And then on top of that, without Joe Burrow, I expect their offense will struggle. Great for Jake Browning in the way he led them to this comeback victory. But I think the more tape that's on him, I think the more interceptions, the more the Bengals defense will be on the field. So that bodes well for counting stats for the Bengals. Now, specifically, Logan Wilson played 100% of the snaps. but he's only averaging 7.5 tackles a game. We like to see more. The good thing with him is he tends to get some interceptions and pass defenses, etc. He only had one this past week. So Logan Wilson is not, that's part of the reason he's usually not considered a number one linebacker and often a number two. It's just he's not he's not going to get a lot of those tackles. He's not a tackle heavy player, even with 71 snaps. So just keep that in mind. Demetrius Knight, who played in the, I believe it was 78% range roughly in week one, only played 58% of the snaps this week. They're clearly taking him out in passing situations and all. And as a result, he only had 5 combined tackles, only which 2 of which are solo. So Demetrius Knight, we've got to be real careful. We're not playing him. We want to find someone else. Keep him on. We're not dropping him, but we do want to find someone else to play in his spot. On the defensive line, Trey Hendrickson, 72% of the snaps, fantastic, with 3 tackles and get another sack and 3 quarterback hits. I must admit, I was leery about him missing all that time, but he has come out of the gates firing away. So very happy with 3 tackles per game and a sack each week. Joseph Asai, 65%. Shamar Stewart left the game with an ankle injury. Not clear if he's going to play this week. Cam Sample, the number 5 edge player, picked up the extra snaps. Miles Murphy did nothing once again. He got a goose egg on his 27% of the snaps. You can drop him. Let's go to the secondary real quick. Jordan Battle, once again, played 68% deep. When I say once again, it was 70% last week, so it's basically about the same here. But still produced with an interception, but only with 4 tackles. And this is where I get nervous. I alluded to Lloyd Gilman, that when a lot of these guys play deep, they'll have some really good strong weeks, but other times when maybe the numbers aren't there, Shawn.
Well, when building your teams through the draft, you should really get a stud, solid safety. So Jordan Battle, Jalen Hawkins, guys like these really should be your safety too. That have that high ceiling, the big plays, the big tackle games, but you're not counting on them to keep your floor very high. You know, somebody that's getting tackles, playing up near the box every week. So you want a box safety to be your first pick. Then you take a guy like Jordan Battle for your second at safety. Or that's how I like to do it. And weeks like this, yeah, I got the big bonus points for the interceptions now. So, and then like last week, he had 9, 10 tackles, something like that. So he's covering that even with the fluctuation. And I'm still okay because I have somebody else playing in the slot or up in the box, keeping my floor high, even if he does struggle. So just a little strategy there. But Jordan Battle is one I like to trust as well.
Now, this is one I'm also going to want your thoughts on, Shawn, and that's Geno Stone, who played 84% deep in week one and shockingly was only 54% deep, and he also played 3% at the wide corner. So that means he was 43% closer to the line of scrimmage, which was very high and very unusual for him. And with that, he had 9 tackles, 7 of which were solo. Are you trusting Geno Stone after this week, or you're thinking this is an anomaly?
Yeah, I'm staying away from Geno. I see him as a 4 to 5 tackle per game guy. So 9 tackles, that's great. I don't see him producing like Jordan Battle can. I don't see him being able to hit that every week or even every other week. Sure, he's going to peak here and there, but I feel like he gives me a lot of low scoring weeks, and that's not enough for me to roster him. I'm going to let somebody else pick him up and deal with those ups and downs.
Let them have that headache.
Yeah. Like I say, even Battle, with his up and downs, I feel they're still higher. The ceiling's definitely higher, and I'm willing to trust his production over Geno's.
Yep. The moral of the story is Geno Stone has not been a consistent IDP player through the years. We're not going to jump on him based on this 1 week. Now, we're going to watch for you and join us again next week. And if this becomes a trend, with a second data point, then we'll have a different discussion. But this would be very unusual to see that a repeat based on past history of Geno Stone. Now, a little slight humble brag. Every once in a while, I like to throw these in there. Someone might have mentioned last week about Dax Hill, and Dax Hill had nine tackles and an interception. And so, yes, I hope some of y'all picked him up like I did. All right, moving on to the Steelers. And the Steelers first, they played 65 snaps against the Seahawks, so just a tidbit above average. Patrick Queen played 92% of those snaps. Peyton Wilson played 86%. Peyton Wilson led the team in tackles actually with 10, 8 of which were solo. But the Steelers 2 weeks in a row have been run on quite a bit. And the Steelers made an interesting addition to the practice squad today, and that is Jawan Bentley, the former New England Patriot, who is known as a run thumper. I don't know if this is bad news for Queen or Wilson, or maybe this is because of the Malik Harrison injury where they put him on IR. But right now, Shawn, how are you feeling knowing that Bentley got signed this afternoon after 2 weeks of the Steelers getting gashed in the run game?
You have to feel nervous. You do. I don't think it's going to be immediate. I don't think we'll see much this week. But if they get gashed again, somebody's going to lose some playing time, and Bentley's going to start eating into somebody. And I'm not sure. I'm almost scared it's going to be Wilson just because of Queen having that green dot. So uh, definitely everyone needs to keep an eye on that. If you got Queen, Wilson, it's something to look out for. Definitely.
Yep, definitely want to watch for. And look, Patrick Queen over the first 2 games, 8 tackles week 1, 6 tackles week 2. That averages out to 7 for those that might be very challenged. But so, he's not exactly lightening up once again. And, Bentley has worn the green dot before in New England as well. And does Bentley move into the green dot and Queen? I mean, the Steelers historically have used one full-time linebacker, which you and I have talked about quite a bit in our shows. And then the second one was a more rotational with a run stopper and a passing down linebacker. So we could see that playing out. So Bentley is another linebacker. When we talk about names you can pick up and stash, Bentley is one that I would definitely consider stashing, right, Shawn? Or do you
Yeah.
disagree with me?
Deep leagues though. If he does start picking up more playing time, this is going to turn into a 3-headed mess here, and basically nobody's going to be playable in your shallow leagues. But yeah, I'm probably going to see if I can find a bench spot for him in a league or two.
Yep.
Yeah, nervous. Like I say,
let me throw one other monkey wrench, as they say. Cole Holcomb actually played 13 snaps, which was actually 20% of the snaps as well. So that's just another name to monitor and keep in mind. Do you think Holcomb would start ahead of Bentley?
maybe. He does have some more familiarity with the system, and he missed last year. Was last year because of the injury?
Yeah, he's missed about a year and a half, but
Year and a half.
From what they're saying, his athleticism is back to where it was.
Now, I thought he looked good on a few plays I've seen in the preseason, but with the money invested in Queen, I think that kind of.
You think that's going to protect him?
I think it will for a little bit. He's going to have a little longer leash there, where Wilson is still considered developmental, I guess, to a point. But he seems to be the more exciting, higher motor, more explosive kind of guy. Right. This could turn into a really big mess.
Yeah. So Holcomb, Bentley, names to watch. If you're watching Red Zone coming up on Sunday, watch that Steelers defense. Watch what's happening in the linebacker level and see what's happening in terms of run stopping. That's one of the great things about IDP. You watch both sides of the ball. It's great. All right, moving to the defensive line. Alex Highsmith, shocker. Love Alex Highsmith, the player, but he's hurt again with another ankle injury. And Mike Tomlin came out today and said they were not going to put him on IR, which at least he won't be out 4 weeks, hopefully. but he's most certainly gonna miss the game this coming Sunday at a minimum. In his absence, Nick Herbig played 78% of the snaps, got an interception as part of that, had 3 tackles, had a pass, well, I guess the pass defense with the interception and all, had a couple of tackles for loss. Jack Sawyer played 40% of the snaps and had 6 tackles, including his first career sack. If people are wondering who's going to play the predominant of the snaps in place of Alex Highsmith, the answer is Nick Herbig. Correct, Shawn?
Yeah, I'm with that too. That's what it's been in the past. Sawyer's still a rookie. Look at him like you would Lucas Van Ness. He's just, kind of the guy that's going to come in, get a few shots, make some plays, but he's only going to play about 25-30% of the game. It's not going to be enough.
So let me clarify something. Herbig only typically plays 25 or 30% when Watt and Highsmith are both healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But with Highsmith being unhealthy, I expect him to be in the 75% range, similar to what Watt and them are, and then Sawyer picking up the other 25% behind him, and maybe 15% behind Watt. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, that's what I think the picking order is as well.
Yeah, and Herbig, his pass rush win rate stats last year were extremely good. So Herbig is a very sneaky edge pickup that I would be making, particularly if I have Highsmith, and particularly if I can stash him somehow, if when he's designated as out or something along those lines, depending on your league rules. Moving to the secondary, we have another mess there, actually. So, the Steelers are quite the mess for us.
Oof.
Juan Thornhill played 100% of the snaps at safety. Chuck Clark played 88%. Okay. Deshaun Elliott was out, missed the game. Mike Tomlin today reported that he expected that Porter had a very good chance to play, Joey Porter, the cornerback, which has Jalen Ramsey implications. We'll come back to that. And he also said Deshaun Elliott he expects back this week as well. Or let me rephrase that. He said he has a chance to play. On top of that, Jabril Peppers has now been there a week and had a chance to learn more about the system. And he's a veteran. He should be able to pick it up pretty quickly. So this whole safety room, Elliott, Thornhill, Clark, Peppers, who's going to be playing this Sunday, Shawn?
This Sunday is going to be Juan Thornhill and Chuck Clark.
So you're not believing Tomlin that Elliott's going to make it back this week?
I feel like it'd be rushing him back. I wouldn't expect him this week. I expect him to practice. Even if he does play, I wouldn't expect it to be a full-time role if he does. If they're smart.
Yeah. Which could have issues for Clark. And Clark, there was no discussion of injuries, and he only played 88% of the snaps. And so any concern there about him having been held out about 12% of the snaps?
Not really. I want to say, though, did those go to Ramsey?
Ramsey actually did not play any free safety.
Okay.
Now, Thornhill could have played free safety, and Ramsey did obviously play in the box in the slot, but he also played 55% of his snaps out wide. So let me continue on with that theme here. With Joey Porter being out, Jalen Ramsey played a lot more on the outside. And so while he was still productive with 6 tackles and 2 pass defenses, the risk with him playing on the outside whenever Porter and or Slayer hurt could really hurt Ramsey's value as well. So that's something to keep in mind as the year progresses. The reason I was so high in particular on Ramsey was him playing that star position, but he's really their third best outside corner. Now, Brandon Echols did play 35% of the snaps as well, and that allowed them to move around Ramsey somewhat, but still he did play 55% out wide. We don't want to see that for Jalen Ramsey. So I think I'm going to agree with you on this, that I don't think we're going to see Deshaun Elliott back this week, even though Tomlin said there's a possibility. And I don't know if we're going to see Porter back as well, which is bad news for Ramsey. I personally am looking for other options, even though Chuck Clark would be the starter. I'm not feeling quite as warm and fuzzy. And even if I have him, the next week, most likely Elliott's back and probably back to a full-time role. So I'm probably looking for someone to replace him and potentially right now before some of the other safeties that are playing more box snaps all get sucked up. Do you hate that, Shawn?
Hate it? No. I picked up Clark several places this past week, but I only started him in about half the places I picked him up. It was some of those were just to block my opponents from getting him, which I'm fine with doing that with my bench players. But yeah, that's not a terrible strategy at all. Just to kind of get that jump on the next guy, especially if you have the bench room to do so.
And we're going to talk about a guy with the New Orleans Saints potentially who could be out there on the waiver wire when we come to the Saints here a little bit later. All right, moving to the Browns. But another blowout game. They only played 56 snaps on defense. What's interesting is because their offense is spending so much time on the field with all this kind of dink and dunk kind of stuff, for lack of a better term, that their defense is not playing a ton of snaps. But their defense is also helping the cause because they've been playing so well and getting off the field very quickly as well. Their defense is doing a great job overall. So that's hurting Schlesinger, who, while he played 95% of the snaps, that only translated to 53 in total, which means he only had 5 combined tackles. Devin Bush is clearly the number 2 linebacker for the Browns, and while he's not playing above 80% of the snaps, he's been productive both weeks so far. He played 79 this week, but he's been very productive in the weeks he has been playing. This week he had 8 combined tackles, got a sack, a couple of pass deflections and all. So, and there's been no word about a potential suspension on him at this point in time. So in deep leagues, Devin Bush isn't the worst option right now based on what we're seeing. Certainly better than the Tyrese Knights of the world, as an example.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was surprised by his production this week, which he's always been on the faster side, so maybe that helps. Yeah, definitely deep leagues pick him up if he's still out there. There's several guys rostered right now on average, according to some of these sites, that are about 2 and 3 times the percent rostered over Devin Bush, and that's guys like I said, Tyrese Knights, Milano, and Trevin Wallace.
Trevin Wallace was another name I was about to bring up. Exactly
Yeah.
right. We'll come to him in a little bit too as well.
Yeah.
So
and Bush is outproducing these guys very soundly.
now moving to the defensive line, a lot of people got hyped on Isaiah McGuire last week. I saw a lot of fab dollars going towards Isaiah McGuire, and like, okay, that was one great week.
Mm-hmm.
But if I remember correctly, he was a 7th round draft pick, or maybe Wright was a 7th round. But anyway, he wasn't a day 1 or day 2 draft pick, was McGuire for sure. He had 6 tackles against that Cincinnati bad offensive line last week. This week against the Ravens, in a little bit more of a steadier line, he played 63% of the snaps and got 1 unassisted tackle. So when we say, hey, great week, but we want to monitor it another week, folks, this is exactly what we're talking about and the reasons why.
Yep.
We don't want to overspend on fab, particularly for some of these edge players, particularly for some of these unknown edge players based on a 1-week sample size.
Especially week 1.
Especially week 1.
It's a part of that don't overreact to the good and the bad. And just a quick shout out, this past Sunday on the Start Sit show, we did suggest that Schlesinger was a sit just based on the matchup against Baltimore. So Baltimore's proven to be a little tougher matchup for a lot of linebackers based on the amount of snaps they're playing and just the amount of plays that are actually coming their way. So just everybody kind of make a note of that. And you won't have to ask us, but you still can.
Great example. Why to come to the Start Sit show? That was some great feedback we gave some folks that if you had Schlesinger on one of your rosters, even if you didn't have a question, you heard that, you might have adjusted your lineup for a better outcome. Moving to the safety position real quick, Grant Delpit 91% of the snaps, Ronnie Hickman 100%. Delpit is frustrating the heck out of me. I mean, he once again played for the second week in a row, 79% close to the line, basically 21%, only 21% deep, which is phenomenal. but only had 5 combined tackles, and he had 1 pass defense. So love the utilization. Absolutely hating on the production. Now, granted, they're playing less than the normal average number of snaps, below the 63 this week, once again 56. But that's just driving me crazy, particularly since he's a former LSU guy. And Ronnie Hickman had 4 tackles. He played 59% deep this week after 75% the week before. But once again, to the point Shawn called out earlier, on a lot of these games that become blowouts, the safeties come closer to the line of scrimmage as the other teams are just running out the clock kind of thing. So that takes care of your Browns. And now we're going to move to the AFC South. And as we move to the AFC South, just a quick plug for our buddy Johnny Freaking Fantasy, who does a weekly waiver wire show on this IDP Plus channel as well. And he's given some really good advice there. So check out Johnny as well. And he also gives sometimes different perspectives from what we have, but gives you something else to think about and weigh against the great information that we're giving you and recommendations that we're giving you. We're hard to beat, Shawn. I'm sorry. Just kidding. Well, maybe not. All righty. With that, let's go to Texans, who played 80 snaps against the Bucks. 80 snaps, folks. That's a lot of freaking football. And that game did not go into overtime, unlike the Cowboys-Giants, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and how much the Giants were on the field. All righty. Al Shahir and Henry To'o both played 96% of the snaps. And when you play 96% of the snaps at 80 snaps, you're going to end up with 10 and 11 tackles respectively, as both of them have. And both of them are very playable in leagues right now because of that snap count and snap percentages that they're playing and because of their production. Christian Harris got on the field for 21%. EJ Speed, I'm going to call him out one last time, and then unless something changes, this will be the last time you hear me mention him. He only played 5% of the snaps, but he had one hell of a tackle on special teams. He lit up that dude, man. So I digress. All right, moving to defensive line. Will Henderson played 75% of the snaps and got a sack. Danielle Hunter, 79% of the snaps and got 2 sacks. And I have to give a shout out to my former LSU Tiger for joining the 100 sack club for his career on a Hall of Fame trajectory, in my humble opinion as well. So congratulations to Danielle Hunter on that. Moving to the secondary, CJ Gardner-Johnson played 43% of the snaps deep, which was a little bit higher than he had done in the previous weeks. Kalen Bullock once again played a lot of deep at 93%, 82% the week before. Jalen Petrie, in case you were wondering, he did miss some time. He only played 63% of the snaps. He went out for part of the first half, but then came back as the second half began. So that impacted him to a certain degree, but he still came up with 6 total tackles. Shawn, I don't know if there's much more to talk about on the Texans other than the fact that my Kalen Bullock bet that he's going to lead the league in interceptions isn't looking very good at this point in time. So he's got to come up with something for me real soon.
Yeah, he's going to need some big games. Will Anderson was my guy to get, I think, 18 and a half sacks or whatever I said. So I'm looking okay there. But the Texans are exactly who we thought they were. As far as, alignments and everything, there's not a lot of change here. Start them like you normally would.
Exactly. All right.
Don't expect the tackles to be as high. Again, that was 80 snaps. So for Toa and Al Shahir, those numbers may come down probably a couple tackles each going forward, unless there's another big snap or another game with that many snaps. So expect those tackles to come down just a little bit. Can't expect that every week.
All righty, moving to the Jags, who played the Bengals, and they played a very nice 69 snaps. They screwed with us in week 1, and then they turned around and screwed with us in week 2. So in week 1, Foye Oluokun played 100% of the snaps, which he did again this week. Now, I'm getting a little bit nervous about Foye. Granted, he got a sack and all this week and a couple tackles for loss, but only 7 tackles. His tackle numbers aren't what we're used to for Foye, so I'm a little bit nervous from that regard, even though he's playing 100% of the snaps. Now, Devin Lloyd, Ventrell Miller, Dennis Gardeck. We talked quite a bit about them last week because last week Lloyd only played 34% of the snaps. Ventrell Miller played 25% of the snaps, and Gardeck played 27% of the snaps, all in this sort of rotation along with Foyer. So what did they do in week 2? Devin Lloyd jumps all the way from 34% to 70% of the snaps. Now, granted, he only had 5 combined tackles, but he did get a pass defense as well and a quarterback hit. Ventrell Miller dropped from 25% to 14%. Gardeck dropped from 27% to 10%. Now, we don't like playing linebackers at 70% snap count typically, Shawn. Do you think this is the beginning of a upward trend? Or do you think week 3 is going to be back to some jumbled mess of week 1? What are you feeling for these other 3 Jag linebackers besides Foye Aluakan?
I'm really hoping this is a trend for Devin Lloyd because he's
You're
shown in the
hoping.
past. I'm hoping. There's nothing I can go off that says, yeah, it's going to 100% be the trend after what they did to us week 1 and then this. It may be something that changes every game based on the matchup. I really don't know. I'm hoping for Lloyd. I held on to him even after last week in most leagues I had him in. I'm still not starting him. He does have that big play with the interceptions, fumble recovery, stuff like that.
Okay, so would you drop Ventrell Miller
Yes.
for Jawan Bentley?
Yes, I've already dropped. I'll drop Ventrell Miller after last week.
Okay, after the games were done on Sunday.
After that first week, I dropped Ventrell Miller. I held on to Lloyd, mostly out of stubbornness, but I mean that's looking like it's potentially it could still become something again. So, still holding on to Lloyd. I'm definitely not starting any of them outside of Foye.
Okay, would you pick up Cole Holcomb over Lloyd?
Over Lloyd, I don't think so.
I would not either.
Not until we see something a little more for sure out of that group. Right now, Wilson and Queen are still your top 2 there. There's not enough of a rotation or anything else yet. So we'll see what this next week looks like. If Holcomb starts gaining some momentum and starts eating into one of them, then yeah, you start making a switch.
Yeah, so Ventrell Miller from in the preseason where it looked like he might be starting next to Foye to playing 14% of the snaps week 2. What a fall from grace. All right, let's move to the defensive line where Josh Hines-Allen played 81% of the snaps and had 6 combined tackles, 3 quarterback hits, unfortunately not a sack. Trayvon Walker, 74% of the snaps and 5 combined tackles, and he did get a sack along with 3 quarterback hits. So they both got 3 quarterback hits, which was very nice. And in the secondary, so we do want to definitely talk about that. Eric Murray and Andrew Wingard both played 100% of the snaps. Eric Murray and Wingard both also had an interception. Murray is averaging 7 tackles a game. So even though he's playing 67% of his snaps deep this past week, 69 in week 1, so let's just call it 68% on average so far, averaging 7 tackles per game, not bad. And I'm going to come back to you in a second. Now, Wingard, unfortunately, only had 2 tackles and 1 pass defense with that, but did have that interception. But he only played 41% of his snaps deep. Murray versus Wingard. Are you still in the Wingard bandwagon ahead of Murray right now, Shawn?
Slightly, yes. I do think this is one that's going to kind of go back and forth. Like one of them's going to have a better week every other week. As long as they're both producing, it's okay. But if Wingard gets to where it's too many low tackle games, then I'm swapping off of him, even if he's still getting some interceptions, because I want that higher floor. And if you get too many 2-3 tackle games in a row, defensive back, I'm cutting you. There's too many of them out there.
Now, you know who the number 3 safety was this past week for the Jaguars?
I thought it was Darnell Savage.
It was Darnell Savage, and he played 29% of the snaps. Do you know who the number 3 safety will be this coming week?
It will not be Darnell Savage.
It will not be Darnell Savage. That is correct. For those that didn't see it, Darnell Savage was released this afternoon. whether it be Lane, I believe he was the 7th round rookie, or whether it be Antonio Johnson, who couldn't beat out Andre Cisco in the past, as an example. I don't think we're chasing any of these other folks, right? And once again, Savage was only playing a limited number of snaps anyway. He played 44% week 1, 29% week 2. We're not
Yes.
chasing any of these other safeties, and we don't think any of these other safeties will overtake Wingard or Murray, right?
No, we're not scared of anybody else. And Savage, over the past, has been one of the worst ranked safeties in the league for a couple years now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we even talked about him, I believe, last week, and saying, it was something along those lines. Other than I believe his rookie year, he has done nothing
Yeah.
but he's gotten some good paychecks. At least we'll give him credit for that.
Somebody's going to pick him up. So maybe he finds a spot and can get a starting role again. I'm not holding my breath on Savage.
Even if he has a good game, don't pick him up, folks. Don't fall into the Darnell Savage trap. It's a Savage trap. Don't fall into the Savage trap. All right, Travis Hunter. Let's talk about him and wrapping up the Jaguars. He played 42 snaps on offense, and he played 43 snaps on defense, if I got my numbers correct, which I'm a little bit worried about right now as I'm reading my notes. So it's in the ballpark, though. We'll leave it at that. And, of course, week 1, he only played 6 snaps on defense. He played 88% of his snaps out wide. His total stats were 2 tackles and 1 pass defense. In offense, week 1, I believe, was 6 catches for 30 yards. So if you're in a half-point PPR, that's not very good. And didn't really contribute anything from an IDP perspective. Is he someone, Shawn, that after these first 2 weeks, you're looking to trade on the hype because it's not going to get any better from here, either on the offense or defense for him?
I can't trade him because I have 0 shares of him. He was so hyped, I couldn't get him for what I was willing to. To the ADP was through the roof. I wasn't giving up any more than that. He was going way too high in drafts with this dual designation thing. I think one of the big things here was Jerry and Jones, if I'm not mistaken, got injured.
That is correct.
And I think this is what's contributed to a little more of his defensive snaps at cornerback. He's hard to trust on offense or defense right now. And yeah, if you can get a crazy big haul for him, I would do that. I would pull the trigger.
I would even take a solid haul at this point in time. The way this is playing out, I didn't get him either in any leagues, whether it be redraft or dynasty. And if I did have him, I have to admit I would be trying to trade on the hype and the upside, and seeing what kind of package I could get for him right now.
Yeah. So even in dynasty, you're moving off of him already.
I would move off of him in dynasty as well.
Yeah, I think I would too. I really do. Phenomenal in college. It's just hard to produce in the NFL, and with this usage right now, it's not ideal at all.
Yep. So I'd be looking for some trade packages out there, folks. That's Ricky and Shawn's opinion. You might hear others that feel very differently, but our crystal ball has been right pretty often on a lot of this stuff. I just leave it at that. All right, moving on to the Titans, who played 61 snaps against the Rams and gave them a much better game than I thought for a lot longer than I thought.
Yeah, weird.
So I was very surprised by that. Some good news at the linebacker position. Cody Barton played 100% of the snaps. Cedric Gray, that's where the good news come in, played 93% of the snaps. The bad news is both of them had 5 tackles each. So with 61 snaps, you would hope for more than 5 tackles each. Now, Cody Barton saved his day with an interception, but a little bit disappointing on the snap count. Now, Gray went up from 82% of the snaps to 93% this past week. There's some interesting stuff that happened in the secondary, though. We'll come to that here in a little bit. And related to Gray playing more, I think it impacted a third safety playing less. On the defensive line, on the edge side of things, Draymond Jones and Femi Oladejo, the rookie out of UCLA, played the most snaps, with Draymond at 72% and Femi at 75%. Both of them had 2 combined tackles. Not extremely productive on 61 snaps. Arden Key only had 38% of the snaps. That was down from 61% the week before. Jihad Ward actually picked up 30% of the snaps as well. So this is one of my LSU guys, but I think at this point in time, 2 weeks in a row, and once again a decrease in the snap count and no sign of a discussion of any injuries that I've seen anywhere. In your deep leagues, I think we're letting Arden Key go,
Yeah, yeah.
even in
Even
your
in,
deep leagues.
even in deep leagues, he was still sitting on the bench on a lot of those. He's just the Titans don't have much of a pass rush at all right now, and outside of Simmons up front, there's not a lot to pick up from. And we did talk about uh, Femi Oladejo being somebody to watch as the year progresses, and kind of a future stash. So to see him start getting this much playing time already is a good sign. Granted, he didn't do much with it. He's a rookie. Defensive line, it takes a while.
Yep. He's someone, particularly in Dynasty League, if you have a taxi squad, he's someone I'd love to stash on the Dynasty taxi squad right now.
Yeah.
And of course, Jeff Simmons played 84% of the snaps, as the Beast has been doing. Only 2 combined tackles, did get a couple of quarterback hits, but we're still on the Jeff Simmons bandwagon for this year. Moving to the secondary real quick, Hooker and Woods both played 100% of the snaps, with Hooker actually even getting a sack to go along with his 8 tackles. Hooker is averaging 6.5 tackles per game, which is great. And he's been playing much closer to the line as well. This past week, he only played 23% of the snaps deep. So if you do the math, that would be 77 closer to the line of scrimmage, which is a great number. So thumbs up on Amani Hooker. Xavier Woods had 6 tackles, as I mentioned. He only played 30% of the snaps deep. Now, I have to be honest, similar to the 49ers numbers from last week, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I was worried about these numbers on the Titans from a who's playing deep perspective, or how much they're playing deep. And week 2 looked more normal what I was expecting from the 49ers. But I still feel good about Amani Hooker, even with the concern with those deep numbers, right, Shawn?
Yeah. Yeah. He was the main one to target here out of this group, and he's doing pretty much what we thought he would.
Yep. And Roger McCreary is the slot cornerback from the Titans, as we talked about last week. His numbers in terms of snaps, he went from 45% week 1 to 75% week 2. That led to him getting 7 combined tackles. So once again, as we stress it with these slot cornerbacks, we need them to get to at least that 75% range in order for them to have a chance to be viable from an IDP production standpoint. And if you look at the Rams, and they do play a lot of 3 wide, I know there's a lot of talk about playing a lot more 12 personnel, but it's been a lot of Puka and Devontae and Tutu oftentimes in there as well, causing the 3 wide receivers, and that gave McCrory enough to be able to be on the field. So that's the Titans there, and we're going to move on now to the Colts, who upset the Broncos in one of the strangest ending games you'll ever see, because of that leverage call, which gave the kicker another chance, not to mention the 3 very conservative plays that Coach Steichen did to not try and get it closer for his kicker to begin with. But all that aside, let's talk about the Colts defense. Zaire Franklin, who had off-season ankle surgery, played 100% of the 59 snaps that the Colts played against the Broncos, so slightly below average, but only had 5 tackles. For someone who's usually averaging double-digit tackles, 5 this week, 4 the previous week. Is it his ankle, Shawn? That's the problem. Are we good here? And because also his age, he's at that 30 range now as well.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about his age and just the pass production. He was fantastic the last few years, new defensive coordinator, so new defensive scheme. He's 30. The injury, there's a lot of things going against him right now. And he was one of the top linebackers taken in most drafts. He was top 3. I don't think I've seen him fall further than 3. So you have to hold him. I expect it to ramp up a little bit more as the season goes on. Maybe gets a little healthier, maybe a little more comfortable in the system here. I think he will pick his numbers up, but you're going to have to be patient. It's not ideal. I think you still got to start him though.
Depends on who I have on my bench, to be honest with
That's
you.
yeah. Good point. Good point there.
He's not an automatic start. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Until we see more.
Yeah, I'll go with that as well.
Now let's talk about Joe Bocci, who we got some great news, and once again another name that you can consider picking up. Last week, he only played 46%. Now, granted, he played about 59% up until garbage time, and then he came out of the game because it was such a blowout the week before. But this week, in a non-blowout game, they bumped him all the way up to 81% of the snaps. Sort of what we were expecting from Jalen Carley's, in the offseason and so forth. Cam McGrone played 46% of the snaps, sort of alternating with Bocci last week, only played 14% this past week. They clearly seeing Bocci ahead of McGrone now, which is great news for Bocci. They still have Anthony Walker, who they signed on the practice squad, so something we'll have to watch. He hasn't been elevated yet. But as of now, Bocci's the number 2 linebacker for the Colts with 7 combined tackles. Shawn, very deep leagues, you need a number 4 or number 5 linebacker. You putting Bocci in at 81% of the snaps?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's safe enough to go with. And the tackle production was solid enough to take that risk.
Okay. I agree with you on that. So moving to the defensive line, DeVaris Buckner only played 69% of the snaps in week 1 because of the blowout. We got back to 86% here in week 2 and had 6 tackles, including 2 tackles for loss. It was nice to see that from DeForest Buckner happening. The edges is where I want to talk. Laiatu Latu was out with an injury. So you would think that their second-round rookie out of Ohio State, JT Tuimoloau, would have played a lot more. And he didn't. He only played 6 snaps total. So what happened on the edge? Kwity Paye played 67%, roughly the same as the week before. Taquan Lewis played 60% of the snaps, roughly the same as the week before. Samson Ebukam, though, went up from 38% of the snaps to 78% of the snaps.
Back from the grave.
Back from the grave after missing all of last year with that Achilles injury. Now, what did he do with that 78% of the snaps? Which, by the way, was more than Paye, was more than Lewis, was more than the rookie. He had 1 total tackle. To his credit, though, it was a solo tackle because Kwity Paye only had 1 unassisted tackle. Taquan Lewis didn't have any stats. That's not good from an edge perspective.
No, it's gross. All 3 of them to be that bad. Are the Broncos that good? Offensive line, the tackles?
I don't think
so.
I don't think Bowles and McGlinchey are that good. They're solid offensive linemen. They're paid well.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say they're all pro caliber like a Trent Williams type. So very different, just disappointing production from the edge, for sure. I'm sitting all those guys, Shawn, in any of my leagues.
Yeah, Buckner's the only person I'm starting on this line.
Edge
rushers,
I was talking about the edge. But,
yeah.
Not even Grover Stewart after he had 7 combined tackles and a tackle for loss. If you need an interior defensive lineman.
I thought I seen somebody else get a good chunk of snaps there at defensive tackle. Was that or somebody got a start? Was it Neville Gallimore?
I'm not sure I saw that, to be honest with you, but okay. Grover Stewart, he's been one of these peak and valley guys, though. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, he's a deep league defensive tackle too, or second on your team, more or less. I don't know what the actual breakdown would be. Maybe a DT3 or something. He usually has solid numbers against the run, but it's a bit of a roller coaster. He's not going to give you much more than that. True run stuffer.
All right, yeah, and I'm with you. But my comment was strictly about the edge. We're absolutely playing DeForest Buckner, particularly where defensive interior linemen's defensive tackles are required. Moving to the safety position, Nick Cross, 100%, Cam Bynum, 97%. Nick Cross only played 17% deep, which is fantastic to give him a chance to maybe repeat last year's numbers. Still a little bit concerned about that in a different system, but he did have 7 combined tackles this week in a pass defense. Cam Bynum played 82% deep for the second week in a row. Did get an interception, which helped his numbers. I think I could have intercepted that pass that he got. Well, no, that's maybe a stretch. But anyway, only 4 tackles playing that deep. That is not a good sign for Cam Bynum, folks. I'll be trying to trade high if someone sees the points he got because of that interception as well. Kenny Moore is the bigger concern that we want to talk about real quick. He only played 81% of the snaps, down from 94% the week before. He only played 2 snaps outside. Everything else was basically slot or box. We like him in the slot, but why we like Kenny Moore is he was one of the starting cornerbacks on the outside, and when they went to 3 corners, he moved to the inside. That's not what's happening right now, particularly in week 2. Xavier Howard and Mekhi Blackman, who they traded for from the Vikings right as training or preseason was ending, they basically played 100% of the snaps on the outside. Charvarius Ward was injured, and he'll be in that mix as well. So there's 3 cornerbacks they're probably comfortable playing on the outside. Kenny Moore might see a significant snap count decrease, not to mention he's 30. If he's only going to play 80% of the snaps roughly, that's a warning sign, Shawn.
Yeah, he's going to have to tackle out of his mind to make up for those missing snaps there. And I think I'm with you. Xavier Howard, straight off the streets came in and he's been playing full time. And then with the other injuries, with Jalen Jones and Ward out this week, it would have been perfect for him to move in and out, and they did not. And I don't know if this was. I don't think it was anything special against the Broncos to do that. So yeah, I think you're onto something here. It might be time to be at least a little concerned. Something to keep an eye on. Again,
I was already.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Shawn. Go ahead, buddy.
Uh, I have no idea where I was going with
I
that.
was already concerned because of age 30 and cornerbacks turning 30, and so he is one, folks, that if people are used to his name and reputation, if you can dump him fast. And there's a lot of cornerbacks out there like a Dax Hill, like an Upton Stout. It's Garrett Williams, even though Garrett Williams is hurt. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Those are some interesting names to consider picking up. All right, moving to the AFC West and the Chiefs. They only played 60 snaps against the Eagles. Boy, the Chiefs and the Eagles, as a side note, do not look like the defending Super Bowl champions, and I'd be surprised. This is looking like a Packers-Chargers kind of Super Bowl potentially, or Chargers might be a little bit stretched. Maybe it's the Ravens or finally the Bills, but I don't think it's the Chiefs or the Eagles this year. I think it's going to be the Packers and somebody else from the AFC. With that, go place your bets in Vegas. Now, Nick Bolton played 100% of the snaps. Drew Tranquill played 88% of the snaps. Nick Bolton, after 8 tackles in week 1, only 6 tackles in week 2. He's only averaging 7 tackles a game. Not going to cut it for what we want for a number 1 type linebacker. He's definitely more of a number 2 type linebacker. So that's where we are with Nick Bolton, folks. Because the Chiefs did not want to get gashed on the ground, Leo Chenal played 63% of the snaps, which I didn't have a chance to go and look, but it's probably the highest amount that he played higher than any game last year. And I think that's an anomaly. I would not recommend chasing him. You agree with that, Shawn?
Yeah, I'm with you. That was totally game scripts. Because the
Yep.
Eagles are not passing deep right now at all.
They're not passing at all in
They're
terms
not
of the
passing
number of
at all.
throws.
You're right.
Exactly. Now, someone we are happy with, Shamari Connor. So we're going to talk about the secondary. He's averaging 9.5 tackles a game. He's only playing in this past week 22% of the snaps deep at safety, playing 100% of the snaps in total. He's playing in the slot. He's playing in the box. We talked about it last week. We're loving Shamari Connor. Hopefully, you're able to get him. If you're able to get him in some of your leagues, let us know on the YouTube channel. Type it into the notes. Let us know who you got, and that you got him and who you might have dropped in his place. Love to hear that in the comments in the question section of that YouTube channel for this show. Brian Cook played 100% of the snaps, but he played 60% deep this week. So we're not interested in him. Haven't been. He did get 4 tackles, but not interested. Jaden Hicks, we talked about dropping him last week. If he didn't do it, if this doesn't help you too, I'm not sure what will. He was down to 47% of the snaps this week, folks, with only 2 tackles. Love some Jaden Hicks, but now part of it was too because they played a lot of 3 linebackers, but I still feel like we can drop him, right, Shawn?
Yeah, we don't see him being over that 60% from last week. We feel like that's probably his peak this year without an injury to take over somebody. Yeah, it's the dream's over.
Yeah. At least for right now and this year.
Yeah, this
We'll see.
season it's over.
Depending, we'll watch if there's injuries. Now McDuffie played 100% of the snaps. He played primarily wide in terms of his snaps, outside corner kind of thing. He's not evolving into that slot cornerback. He did play 12 snaps there, but Shamari Connor is the primary in the slot. Moving to the defensive line, the big news: Michael Dana only played 5% of the snaps, and I didn't see any word of any injury anywhere, Shawn. So Karlaftis played 90%. Ominahu played 68%, and the person who got the big jump in snaps was Ashton Gelati, the rookie out of Louisville, who jumped from 14% to 47%, still third among the defensive ends. He did have 3 combined tackles, including a tackle for loss. Go ahead.
Mike Dana did have a hip injury, but I don't know at what point of the game he came out.
Okay,
So
well, it would have been early because he only played 3 snaps.
okay,
So it happened very early in the game. Okay, thanks for letting me know that. I didn't see that one as well. So maybe I was getting a little bit too excited about Gelati there, but I think he is someone that he is worth a taxi squad stash as well from an edge perspective.
yeah, I think so too. I know some of the guys I was talking to in the off season that follow college and all very religiously. They were pretty hyped on him. Expecting big things there, especially with Spags and the way he likes to use his defensive line and all. So somebody to watch for future stuff here.
Right. So Omar Norman Lott, the 2nd-round rookie out of Tennessee, if you got to see the play, he just smashed Hurts. it was fun to
It looked
watch.
like it hurts.
Yeah, it looked like it hurts, that's for sure. But he was still 4th among the Chiefs' defensive tackles in playing time. Don't get excited. He did get credit for a sack on that play, but don't go chasing him yet. He only played 27% of the snaps, so don't let that one play get you overexcited to go and pick him up and spend a bunch of fab right now. Right, Chris Jones played a bunch of snaps again, 85%. At least he got 2 tackles. He did get a quarterback hit, which was nice, but it'd be nice to see him getting some sacks. Moving to the Chargers against the Raiders, and boy, their defense is something else. It was really fun to watch and frustrating the hell out of the Raiders and Gino for sure last night. Deion Henley gave a lot of people, including myself, quite the scare, particularly since he's one of my linebackers in the Kings Classic League. And when they announced that he had an illness and was suddenly questionable, I'm like, oh crud! And it's Monday night, and do you drop someone who you really
There's
don't want to
nobody
drop?
left.
And then if there is, who you really picking up? Are you going to take a chance on a Marlowe Wax or something like that, or Delshawn Phillips? So luckily let it ride. When I saw the inactives, didn't see him inactive, like, okay, thank goodness, I'm going to ride with this sucker. And boy, did he have a hell of a game with 10 combined tackles, a sack, an interception on the very first offensive play from scrimmage by the Raiders. So not bad for a guy that had like the flu that came out and played
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. To give us a scare like that, I know Twitter was or X, whatever, it was in a panic right before the game, and I caught it late, so I'm seeing the kickoff, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well looks like he's playing." And I'm like, "What do you mean looks like?" So yeah, that was quite the heart attack.
Yeah, so Henley's a top 5 linebacker for this year for sure. Troy Dye stepped into the Perriman role. Perriman was officially placed on IR. He played 67% of the snaps, only had 3 assisted tackles. Not much there. We're not chasing Troy Dye. On the defensive line, the big news: Khalil Mack. Apparently, your arm is not supposed to bend in the direction that it did on that play. I hate watching those things, man. I was not meant to be a doctor, paramedic, nurse, you name it, kind of thing. So I saw enough. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's not supposed to do that. And I wasn't surprised when he came out with his arm in a sling. Don't expect him back anytime soon. With that, Tuipuloto's snaps increased up to 74%, just actually slightly week over week. But Bud Dupree went all the way from 39 to 63%. Caleb Murphy went all the way from 23 to 49% to make up for Mac being out. It was really Dupree and Murphy's stats that changed. Bud Dupree, he hasn't been something for quite a while. He's in his early 30s. People are thinking he can be the Mac replacement, but we're not chasing Bud Dupree, are we, Shawn?
No, it's you're going to have to be something crazy desperate on your team to have to want Bud Dupree right now. At his age and his injury history, it's just really slowed him down over the years. He's just not what he was.
Yep.
If you're truly desperate and want to take that shot, I mean, I can't stop you, but I'm not expecting much out of you.
Yeah. Just if you do it, you're doing it against our recommendation.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
leave it at that, okay, folks? All right, moving to the secondary. Derwin James, Aloy Gilman both played 100% of the snaps at safety. Now, Elijah Molden was out. Tony Jefferson was caught up from the practice squad. The venerable veteran who played one hell of a game. He looked really good. But we're still not going to play Tony Jefferson next week. Derwin James only played 4% deep or wide. 96% was close to the line of scrimmage. We love seeing that. Now, I would have liked to have seen more than the 7 tackles and 2 pass defense he had, but they were using him rushing the passer. They were using him all kind of ways. And with Mac being gone with this injury for a period, at least a short, probably 4 weeks at least at a minimum, I'm guessing, maybe more. Okay, I shouldn't be playing a doctor, but that's a guess, folks. But Derwin James, I think, will be used even more closer to the box to help offset that Khalil Mack injury, quite frankly, and we'll see more blitzing. So love me some Derwin James right now.
Yeah, with those 3 safety sets that they have, Elijah Molden or Tony Jefferson, both those guys are veterans, especially Tony Jefferson. He's been around a long time. So they're comfortable with setting those guys back and just turning Derwin loose. Yeah, I'm with you. Derwin, he should shoot up the ranks here pretty quickly if they're going to deploy him like that.
Yep. So Aloy Gilman played 100% of the snaps, as I mentioned earlier, with 70 snaps, but he only had 2 combined tackles. He did have a couple pass defenses, one of which actually led to the Henley interception when he deflected the ball. But this is one of those back to the free safety and the deep safety. He played 80% deep this week. The week before he played 70%. He had he had some very good production, but this week 80% and only 2 combined tackles, a couple of pass defenses. This is where I get more worried than Shawn probably on these people that are playing deep. But Gilman in general has not been necessarily a big play player to begin with.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's always been a 5 tackle kind of guy. Might hit 9 or so every now and then, occasional interceptions. But I don't view him and like Jordan Battle as the same type of player. And that's just based on their histories and what I've seen in the past. Gilman's always been somebody who's almost startable on your team, but more of a bye week need or just desperation.
Yep. And we love us some Tarheeb still as a side note.
Good bounce back.
Yep. 9 combined tackles, tackle for loss, couple of pass defenses. Love us some Tarheeb still. He is their slot cornerback. He starts outside and moves inside. When they go 3 wide, Cam Hart is the one that comes in across from Dante Jackson. All right, moving to the Broncos, and we're going to have to pick up the pace majorly, Shawn. 71 snaps played. Singleton played 100%. Sternert played 80%, which was up from 67% from him. Stearns had 2 sacks in 2 weeks, so I'm excited when Greenlaw comes back because I think Greenlaw will play more than the 80% and that he will get a chance for those sacks. Alex Singleton is only averaging 7 tackles a game, folks. He was one of the ones I was off of. Now moving to the edge position, Benito 61%, Cooper 66%. Their rotation partners, Benito 61 goes along with Joan Ellis's 39. Jonathan Cooper 66 goes with DeAndre Tillman's 34%. That's how they're rotating them, folks. Love Joan Ellis, as we talked about last week, but not playing enough to start him. Okay. Moving to the secondary. Hufanga played 92%. Brandon Jones played 93%. Hufanga right now is averaging 10 tackles a game. Jones is averaging 7 tackles a game. In terms of deep versus wide alignment, Hufanga is played 57% close to the line this past week. Brandon Jones played 50% close to the line. So Jones's role was slightly different than it was with PJ Locke. And Hufanga is probably the preference over Brandon Jones right now, though I think we're comfortable playing both, right, Shawn?
I'm definitely playing Hufanga, similar to the Fitzpatrick situation in Miami. We got used to those guys playing deep and out of the box and whatnot, and right now they're both spending about half their time, if not more, down near the line. So fantastic.
Yep. And then the slot cornerback, Jaquan McMillan and Jade Barron once again kind of rotating. And then even with that, the slot wasn't playing 100% of the snaps. So McMillan played 48%, Barron played 23%. Can't play either one of those folks right now until one of them becomes the definite starter, and we don't know when that's going to happen. So right now, particularly with cornerbacks, as much as I love Barron, I'll have to let him go, and I'd be comfortable letting McMillan go as well and finding somebody else for sure. Last thing I'll mention on the Broncos, Riley Moss did play 100% of the snaps, of which 70 of the 71 were on the outside. Moving to the Raiders, who play the Chargers, and they with 58 snaps played, because the Chargers also dominated to a certain degree. Devin White played 100% of the snaps. He's averaging 9.5 tackles a game. Jermaine Pratt, quite a change in usage, so let's talk about that. Last week, week 1, he played 92% of the snaps. Of course, Landon Roberts left very early in the game. This week, Pratt only played 76% because Roberts came back and played 67% of the snaps. In those 76% of the snaps that Pratt played, the good news is he got 7 total tackles, a couple of pass defense. The bad news is that, let me see my numbers here, he played 68% of his snaps on the D-line/edge versus only 29% in week 1. That is not a recipe for success for an off-ball linebacker. Shawn?
Yeah, that's awful. We were concerned when Roberts did come back that we would see him on the edge more, but you said it was 60 some percent.
68%. Yep.
That's
30 of his 44 snaps were aligned on the D-line/edge.
That's insane. I don't understand it, but staying away from it. Now he saved himself with the tackles, but that's probably not going to happen every week.
That's not going to be repeatable with that utilization. So that's the scoop on Pratt. Roberts, as I mentioned, 67%, 5 tackles. Jamal Adams, in the 33% of the snaps, 3 tackles. When he's out there, man, he is playing. I'm not just saying because he's an LSU guy, but he is always in the mix. You always see him around the ball. So does he take over someone at some point? Not sure. But as of now, he's a number 4 linebacker who you can't play or use. On the defensive line, one major change here. Tyree Wilson, who played 54% of the snaps in week 1, was all the way down to 24% of the snaps in week 2. Shawn, that's another one. I didn't see any mention of an injury anywhere on him.
Nothing that I've seen.
Yep. He got 1 pass defense. I guess in week 1, they weren't satisfied maybe with a combination of either his pass rushing or rush defense. And so the defensive tackles, interior defensive linemen, played a lot more. Booker went up from 59 to 66%. Jonah Laulu, I learned how to say that last night watching the game, went from 41 to 55%. Liki Fotu, who didn't play in week 1, went from 0 to 38%. And so all those got
Jermaine Pratt being on the edge a little more is got something to do with Wilson and Kuntz being down.
Well, Kuntz played 45% for the second week in a row, exact same amount of snaps.
Okay, so just Wilson dropped.
Yeah, so Wilson had the big drop, and Kuntz is mostly, being leveraged in pass rushing situations for the most part.
Yeah.
Not feeling good about any of those folks, any of those ones that we just talked about, whether it be the defensive tackles that I ran through very quickly. Even Adam Butler, who played 78% of the snaps, only had 3 assisted tackles is all he did. Max Crosby played 98%, had one tackle. So for all the running around, and man, he seems like he was all over the place. His tattoos were showing up everywhere, but he did not do much on the productivity side. At the safety position, Chin and Polomao played 100% of the snaps. Polomao played 85% of the snaps deep after 93% in week one. He had 5 combined tackles. He did have the interception the week before that saved him. No big plays this week to save him. Jeremy Chin had 6 solo tackles, including tackle for loss and a pass defense on his 100 snaps. So still playing Chin, but we don't want to play Polomao, do we?
He's somebody I considered in very deep leagues, but it's going to be more of a bye week situation probably, where I'll just have to have somebody, and I think he'd be worth taking a shot on then. But again, playing that much deep, he's one of those that could give you some tackles, or he could kind of goose egg you.
Right. Similar to the Jaguars screwing with us, the Cowboys screwed with us at the linebacker position as we now move into the NFC East. And Murray played 67 snaps, 100% of the snaps, which is what the Cowboys had, 67 snaps on defense. Jack Sanborn, who played 76% the week before, was up to 84%, led the team with tackles with 8, 4 which were solo, 4 which were assisted tackles. Damone Clark dropped from 67% to 30%. Maris Lufau was down to 13%, only played 9 snaps. Are we going to trust Sanborn in week 3, Shawn?
Maybe in deep leagues, very deep leagues where I got to start 4 or 5 linebackers, I might, but outside of that, no, not yet.
All right, moving to the edge position now. Sam Williams, 61% of the snaps. Fowler, 42%. Marshawn Nealon, 40%. The rookie, Donovan Ezerico, 39%. Jadeveon Clowney, his signing was announced by Jerry Jones right after the game. Of those 4, Fowler, Williams, Ezerico, Nealon, who's going to lose the most snaps to Clowney?
I assume it's Fowler, even though he's the veteran here. He seems to be the least productive of all these guys in these first couple weeks. Sam Williams looks like the surest bet on one side, and I assume Klein is going to eat into that other side.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of Fowler and the rookie Ezerico. I think is the two. We talked about stashing Ezerico on the taxi squad. It's one of the questions that came up on the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
He's still someone I want to stash, but Ezerico has 1 tackle in 2 games. Now he does have 3 quarterback hits, which is nice. I did see a lot of people back to spending fab based on 1 week. Went out and spent a lot of fab dollars on Sam Williams after a 6 tackle week in week 1. And the same with Deo Odeyingbo with the Bears, and we'll talk about him in a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't do that off of 1 week on edge players, folks, if there's something we can help from a learning and education perspective. Because Sam Williams, he led, like I said, with 61% of the snaps, but had 1 assisted tackle. That's what he had for the game.
I believe it was James Houston that got the sack this week. So, I mean, it's probably going to be like this all season. It could be anybody's week, and we're not going to know whose week it is. Best to avoid this situation entirely.
Yep. Hooker and Wilson both essentially played 100% of the snaps. Hooker played 79% deep. Once again, Donovan Wilson played much more close to the line. It was 60% week 1. It was 50% or 51% here in week 2. At least Wilson got us some productivity this week with that playing in that type of formation situations close to the line. He had 6 tackles this week versus the 1 last week. And of course, he did get that interception in overtime, which then led to them getting the victory. All right, so that is the Cowboys. The only other thing I'll mention, Deron Bland is probably not going to play again this week. Trevon Diggs moved out to his normal outside position as he continues to get more healthy, playing almost all his snaps on the outside. Moving to the Eagles, who only played 60 snaps. Zach Bond, another one that people are probably hurting on a little bit right now. He had 6 tackles this week on 100% of the snaps, averaging 7.5 per game. We want him closer to double figures. We're not giving up on him yet, but someone that we'd like to see more productivity from. Jihad Campbell played 97% of the snaps, and the good news for him, whereas in week 1 he played 21% of the snaps on the edge, Week 2, he only played 12% of the snaps on the edge. I think that had to do with the signing with Zadarius Smith helping us there. And Jeremiah Trotter did not play a single snap on defense once again this week, folks. Moving to the edge, Zadarius Smith, we'll start with him, just signed, started, had 4 combined tackles, half a sack, which is fantastic. But he only played 33% of the snaps. Will that go up? I expect that it will. But be careful here in the short term. That's probably a little bit of a fluke in week 1. Nolan Smith down from 85% to 73% of the snaps. Jalix Hunt down from 64 to 57% of the snaps. Josh Uche only 27%. And once again, Aziz Ojulari and Okoronkwo were both healthy scratches. Of all those edge players, is there any of them that you're playing right now, Shawn, in regular size leagues?
Nope, not at all. No production, or not enough production for these guys, and this rotation, similar to the Cowboys, is going to be a little hard to figure out probably week to week who's going to get the good week. So I'm staying away from all these guys.
All right. Moving to the secondary, Blankenship, 88% deep. Andrew Makuba, 71% deep. Now, Makuba only played 80% of the snaps. Sidney Brown got another 23%. But in those 80% of the snaps, Makuba was very productive in that he had 6 tackles and got a half a sack, and he got a pass defense, which was actually an interception. So really like the productivity on those snaps, but also he played 71% deep. Is Makuba someone you're picking up?
I think so. Sidney Brown has a history of getting injured and was hurt some in week 1 already, so it's coming. And I think Kuba sooner than later is going to take this over completely. And dude, his production was fantastic this weekend, so he's definitely on my radar. Deep leagues, I'm going after him if he's still out there.
Yep, I am as well. I'm probably not starting him in week
No.
3, but I'm trying to get him on my bench.
Yep.
Cooper DeJean did play 100% of the snaps again. He only played 9 of his snaps out wide, 9 of the 60 that he played. So we love that utilization. I talked last week that we expected higher productivity from a stats perspective, and we got that with that 100% utilization. Moving on to the Commanders, who played 68 snaps versus the Packers. Boy, the Packers look so good, man, in the first couple of weeks in the defense. Parsons and Luvu played 100% of the snaps, but Shawn, Frankie Luvu, he played 23 snaps on the D line, which was 34% of his snaps, and that contributed to his stat line of 2 assisted tackles only.
We tried to tell everybody during the offseason that he was too sack dependent to really trust and to try not to draft him. And if you did, then you're in a little bit of a bind here. I'm okay with dropping him for somebody that's actually putting stats up.
Now, as soon as someone drops him, they're going to complain because he's going to get one of those games where he gets 1.5 sacks and about 3 tackles, and that's bound to happen. But know that.
But then he's going to get me 4 more terrible outings so then you're going to look fine in 2-3 weeks later. So.
Exactly right. So that's the thing to keep in mind with Luvu. All right, moving to the secondary. Will Harris is only averaging 4.5 tackles per game with no big plays. He's getting used incredibly well. He's 69% of his snaps this past week were close to the line of scrimmage. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to include the wide corner. So it's a little bit. It was about 63% close to the line for the second week in a row, actually. But he's a veteran football player. He's not anything special. He's one I am comfortable letting go of. Shawn, you?
Yeah, I didn't take him. Quan Martin was my target this offseason during the drafts and all, and I'm comfortable starting Quan, but yeah, Harris, move off of him. If there's something better out there, a Makuba, I'll take the shot on Makuba over Harris. Even at 80%.
Quan is averaging 6 tackles per game versus 4.5 of Will Harris. Now, Quan, unfortunately, we're hopeful last week that his 51% that he played, only 51% deep, meaning 49% close to the line, that that could continue, and that'd be great for Quan Martin. Unfortunately, he was back to 68% deep this past week. He still had 7 tackles, got a pass defense and a quarterback hit as well, along with that. So still productive. He is very athletic and very smart, a former second-round pick. There could be some up and downs if he's playing that deep role, but it is someone we do like. Just know that that deep safety role could impact us on certain weeks. On the defensive line, of course, Dietrich Wise out for the year, and boy, out for the year during a kicking play. That just sucks in terms of when and how that happened. But Dorrance Armstrong, quick shout out for him. 75% of the snaps, up from 59. Now, part of that was because Wise got hurt early in the game, but he's got 2 sacks in 2 weeks, and he's getting tackles as well. Like I mentioned, the 6 tackles from this past week. Dorrance has been up and down and up and down through the years. Is this the year we finally see the Dorrance Armstrong breakthrough, Shawn?
I'm not going quite that high on him, but he's solid enough that yeah, deep leagues I'm probably starting him. But I'm nervous every week because he can give me that goose egg that I fear is coming.
Yeah, and then Sain Rastil is the slot corner still. He played only 85% of the snaps, and which was equated to basically only 8 on the outside. Basically, is where it ended up for Sain Rastil. So someone we're still comfortable with playing on the slot. Moving to the Giants. I don't know if I ever recall since I started doing this type of analysis having a team that played 89 snaps on defense. Maybe there is, and I'm forgetting. But holy cow, that's a lot of freaking snaps that the Giants defense played. And there's a lot to unwrap here, but we're going to try and do it fast to pick things up. Bobby Okereke played 98% of the snaps, so he played 87. And with that, he had a whopping 10 tackles. On 98% of, well, let's just do it this way, of 87 snaps, I would have hoped for about 15 or 16, but
Yeah,
only
he should have put up Roquan numbers. Roquan 15 tackles. That's what Okereke should have got this week.
Yeah. Darius Muasau, who we told you all would be the fill-in for Micah McFadden, unfortunately, he got a concussion, or let me rephrase that, a head injury, technically, and he only played 23 snaps, and then he was out with that 1 tackle on 23 snaps. Not exactly great. Chris Board was his replacement. He got hurt. Chris Board got put on injured reserve today. Muasau with the head injury may not be back. Swayze Bowman played the rest of the snaps at that linebacker position. And the Giants signed 2 players to the practice squad today, if I remember correctly. One was the undrafted rookie from Cincinnati, whose name from last year, whose name I can't pronounce. And the other one is Curtis Jacobs. We're not chasing those 2. We're not chasing Swayze Bowman. Granted, there might be people playing in that spot, but when Muasau, for example, plays 23 snaps and gets 1 total tackle, we're just not going to have a lot of confidence there. Shawn, you feel differently than that?
There was one name I did see signed on there as well, and it's a journeyman who, when started, can rack up some tackles. That's Neville Hewitt to look out for. So, if he streamlines straight to the starting lineup this weekend in deep leagues, I might take that shot if I don't have anybody better. That's the name I'm looking for to kind of surprise everybody this week. Straight from the practice squad into the starting lineup and rack up a good 7-8 tackles.
You're right. I did miss it. There was actually I messed up. That Morrow, whatever his name was, Cincinnati, did not sign with the Giants. It was Hewitt and Jacobs that signed with the Giants. And Neville Hewitt may very well end up starting. And Shawn's absolutely right. When he gets playing time, not bad. So if you're in a desperate situation and you're in a deep league, Neville Hewitt is a name to watch. Now, you want to watch on Saturday, and you want to follow on X, and you want to see who gets uplifted from the practice squad, because right now he was a practice squad signee. If he's not one of the 2 that get called up, then you certainly don't want to play him, because he is signed to the practice squad, not the 53-man roster.
Yeah.
On the safety side of things, Tyler Nubin and Jevon Holland both played 100% of the snaps. Once again, like to have seen more productivity. Nubin only had 5 tackles. He did have 1 tackle for loss, but he's only averaging 5.5 tackles per game. Now, keep in mind the Giants played 70 snaps after last week 2 weeks ago in week 1, 89 snaps this week. So a little bit disappointed with Newman so far. Jevon Holland is doing a little bit better, averaging 7.5 tackles per game as well. So out of Holland and Newman, if you had to pick one right now, you still sticking to your guns with Newman, or you flipping to Holland right now? And let me just mention one other thing. Holland played 73% of the snaps deep this past week. Newman played 57% of the snaps deep. So Newman is playing closer to the box. No, though not as much as we would like or hope.
Yeah, I really expected Dupin to basically take over the second linebacker spot and to eat up all those tackles. And that hasn't happened. So that's got me concerned here. If you're picking right now based on stats, you're taking Holland. And I really don't know what the deal here with Newman is. If he's just not getting to the plays fast enough, or they're just designed away from him. I'm unsure here. So I'm definitely concerned because I, I have a lot of Newman shares.
Yeah,
If I've got two other safeties that are very viable options, Chamari Connor and maybe even Jordan Battle, I'm probably starting those guys over Newman right now.
Chuck Clark or Tyler Newman this week?
I'd probably stick in Chuck Clark right now. Yeah, I'm going to have to see Newman really step his game up before I can just throw him in there again. And if he goes another week or two with low stats, then I'm probably bouncing him off the team. I'm not waiting around for a defensive back. They're not holding my team up.
All right, fair enough. Drew Phillips played 80% of the snaps in the slot, which when you play that many gives you 71 snaps, which is fantastic for our slot cornerbacks. Had 11 total tackles, 2 pass defense, a tackle for loss. One of those pass defense was an interception. In week 1, he played 83% of the snaps as well, once again versus 70, which is more than average.
Mm-hmm.
Drew Phillips, his productivity wasn't nearly as good in week 1. What matchups are the key, folks? Cowboys played a lot of 3 wide, and obviously the game was a shootout, and the Giants played a ton of snaps. So we do like Drew Phillips, but don't go crazy on your fab dollars on Drew Phillips. On the defensive line, Brian Burns off to a great start, played 81% of the snaps, leading the edges for the Giants in percent played, and he had 3 sacks over the 2 games so far. Kayvon Thibodeau is looking much better than expected. 70% of the snaps. He also has sacks in both games, and he had 5 tackles as well during this past game. Abdul Carter, though, 75% of the snaps, up from 54% in week 1, which is great, but he only had 1 tackle and 1 quarterback hit. Shawn, it goes back to your point on rookie edge, folks, right?
Yeah, we've seen even the elite guys have weeks like this where they're up and down. More so with rookies, that's just part of it. Takes them a little while to kind of build their bodies up and really take off. So don't go trading them away thinking it's a lost cause. This is expected. Right. Good to see him kind of take over the share there, snaps over Thibodeau, even though it is 4 or 5 snaps. Interesting that he got more this week. I wonder if that's going to stick going forward, or if we're just going to see that number kind of back and forth.
Something just popped into my head to consider for the Giants. We were talking about Neville Hewitt and Muasau and all those guys. Abdul Carter, before he became an edge at Penn State, was an off-ball linebacker playing in the box. So with all the injuries, do they move him there and then rush him over the center and guards a little bit more? That could be interesting and something we need to watch for this coming week.
Yeah, good. I'm making a move of that. Okay, watch out for that. That's a good point.
Something would definitely want to watch for and see that utilization. All right, moving to the Lions as we move now to the NFC Central. Of course, they've had 2 blowout games. They've been on both sides of those blowout games, one a loss and one a win. And this week's win, Jack Campbell and Anzalone played 100% of the snaps up until garbage time, and then they were out, which was why they both finished with 88%. Campbell is averaging 8.5 tackles per game so far. Derek Barnes continues to get a lot of snaps. Now it's off the edge, but 78% snaps, and he had 6 total tackles, but he falls into that Jermaine Pratt category based on how they're using him. Kirby Joseph only played 71% of the snaps. He did miss some game time due to injury. What happened though is Brian Branch ended up picking up a lot more free safety snaps with Kirby Joseph out. And as a result, Brian Branch had 39% of his snaps deep, whereas the previous week he only had 17% deep. So we're going to want to watch injury reports, see what they're saying about Kirby Joseph, because if they use Brian Branch like that because of his skills and capability, and they like to play that one high safety and have that protection in the back, this could be really detrimental to Branch's production, folks. Aiden Hutchinson, nice to see him get a sack, but boy, still a very slow start in my opinion, with only 2 tackles in that, including that one sack. But he is playing a lot, 84% of the snaps, so he sat out during garbage time, so pretty much 100% up until garbage time. With the sun rising and the sun setting every day, you can also count on Marcus Davenport getting hurt. Not only did he get hurt once during the game, he hurt twice. First, he went out with an ankle injury, and then he went out with a shoulder injury. The shoulder injury seems to be more concerning, and he might be out. Al-Qadim Muhammad is the person who picked up the most snaps in his absence and had a decent game with 53% of the snaps, 4 tackles, including a sack. Shawn, we're chasing Al-Qadim Muhammad in lieu of Marcus Davenport?
I am not.
I knew that would be your answer. That's what we call a softball. Um, folks, that is not
And
what
I
that is.
knocked her right out of there. I
Yeah,
appreciate the love.
and there was no practice swings needed. He just, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're not picking up Marcus Davenport either, even though he had a sack earlier in the
You
week.
could have told me Marcus Davenport had 2.5 sacks, and I'd said not to chase it. Because
So
he was
much
going to get.
talent, but unfortunately, those injuries.
Mm. Good for him for still finding work, though.
Yeah, exactly. And getting paid. He's getting paid to get hurt.
I could do that.
All right, moving to the Packers, who also played a very nice 69 snaps. Um, Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker both played 100%. Cooper is averaging 11 tackles per game. Quay Walker, 8.5 tackles per game. I think we're pretty satisfied with both of those gentlemen right now, Shawn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, where we want to unravel things a little bit, let me phrase that. A better way of saying that is peel the onion a little bit, is on the secondary. So Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams played 100% of the snaps. They were the 2 primary safeties, with Xavier McKinney playing 78% deep, which contributed to him only having 3 tackles. Evan Williams surprisingly only played 61% deep, which is much lower than the previous week where he played 77% deep. So it looks like McKinney played more deep and Williams played less deep when we look at things from week 1 to week 2. In the slot position, Javon Bullard played the majority of the snaps there for the Packers. He played 55 of his 58 snaps that he played in the slot. The other 3 were in the box. So Javon Bullard was the primary slot player for the Packers. Evan Williams did play 19 in the slot, 19 snaps in the slot, but part of that was due to sometimes some 4 wide stuff as well. Carrington Valentine ended up being the odd person out. He played 61% of the snaps. Nate Hobbs played 46% of the snaps. So this was a Valentine and Hobbs kind of rotation, and it looks like Hobbs, as he's come back from injury, they're easing him in. So it looks like Hobbs is going to play more on the outside. Bullard is going to be that slot. McKinney and Williams are going to be your safeties. That's how it looks is going to be, how things are going to be primarily for the Packers. We've been waiting for this for this onion to be peeled. That's how it looks like things are playing out. I do want to talk about Keyshawn Nixon, who probably scored for you fairly well because he had an unusually high, non-repeatable 5 pass defenses. That is just not reliable, sustainable, etc. Don't expect that to repeat. And he only had 2 tackles on these 69 snaps. He did do the punt returns for them as well, for those in return yardage leagues. But I'd be really nervous about Keyshawn Nixon right now. I'd be seeing if I could trade high on the value. Shawn, do you agree with that or do you disagree?
If you can trade a corner anytime and get some pretty good value out of it, I'm all for it. With the volatility of that position, yeah, I'm not holding on to anybody. at corner.
The word is next.
Yeah, yeah. Just check the matchups,
Yep.
follow the trend, and stream.
Okay. Moving to the defensive line real quick. Rashawn Gary, 7 tackles last week, only 3 this week, but he has 2.5 sacks year to date as he picked up another one this week. He was down from 70% of the snaps played to 62% this week, which is more in line with what I expected of him. But Micah Parsons is having a positive effect on him. I think it's also helping Lucas Van Ness, who also had 3 tackles again this week. The one name I do want to call out because I mentioned it last week, Kobe Wooden, who ended up starting and playing 52% of the snaps. And I said, there's someone we want to keep an eye on because he had 6 tackles and he looked like he had taken over the starting role. Big change week over week with Parsons jumping up in snaps from 45% to 68%. Wooden's snap count went down from 52% to 30%, which is what we typically would have expected from him. And so that 6 tackles went down to 1 tackle. If you did take a stab, I spent $1 in Fab just to see how this would play out. And I didn't give up much. And I'm going to be setting him free. And I hope you'll be doing the same. That takes care of the Packers. Let's move to the Vikings, who played 66 snaps this past week. Blake Cashman was on injured reserve. Eric Wilson, as we told you would happen, played 100% of the snaps. He played the Blake Cashman role. Ivan Pace shockingly played 89% of the snaps. A number 2 linebacker doesn't do that usually. Tied for the team lead in tackles with 9, including 1 tackle for loss. Shawn, with Harrison Smith also being out, with Blake Cashman being out, do you think that Pace's snap count was due to that? And if we get Harrison Smith back, that Pace will drop back to that 70% range or even possibly lower as Wilson maintains the 100%.
Yeah, I think this was both Harrison Smith and Andrew Van Ginkel being out of this game had a lot to do with them staying in a base formation for somebody tweeted this, and I cannot remember who it was, but it was like 70% of the first 2 weeks they had been in base defense. So highly unusual for Brian Flores, given his past and the way he likes to change everything up. So getting just one of those guys back is going to hurt Pace. Getting them both back, I would imagine, will drop Pace down to 60% at best. So I imagine Metellus will come back up, start playing more of that role we drafted him for. Harrison Smith will be playing deep. Van Ginkel will be outside, inside, just kind of mixing around a bit. So crazy production for Pace's snap count. That's the only way he is going to produce this year on your team. If you're starting him, you got to have him outplay his snap percentage, and that's not sustainable.
So Pace is another one. Sell high.
Yeah.
Sell high, sell high, sell high. A lot of people are in need of linebackers right now, folks, particularly in your deeper leagues. Okay, speaking of Andrew Van Ginkel, who is inactive, Dallas Turner had a major step up in production and in playing time. He went from 43% of the snaps to 91% with Andrew Van Ginkel being out. He had 5 tackles and combined tackles and a sack. What was interesting, he played 44 of his 60 snaps on the D-line, 7 in the box and 9 in the slot. That sounded a lot like Andrew Van Ginkel's numbers from the past as well. So enjoy the Dallas Turner train while you can this week. If you played him, fantastic, great move on your part. But if Van Ginkel's back, don't expect this to repeat this week, folks. Van Ginkel will move back into that role. At the safety position, medalist Theo Jackson played 94% of the snaps. Medalist played 66% deep. Theo Jackson played 79% deep. And those are relatively consistent week over week for both of those players in terms of how deep they're playing. Medalist only 3 tackles. He did get a pass defense. Theo Jackson, surprisingly, 9 tackles, including 1 fumble recovery. But that's something we're not betting on every week from Theo Jackson. Even though they signed him to a 3-year extension, they like him. People treat him as a backup. He's playing the Cam Bynum role sort of last year, folks. And so what you saw from Bynum, you could expect from Theo, which Bynum every once in a while had a good game like this, but for the most part, it was usually 4 or 5 tackles. So be careful about Theo Jackson. You agree, Shawn?
Yeah, absolutely.
All
Right
right.
with you.
All right. At the defensive tackle position, Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave are both looking great. Allen, 7 tackles, Hargrave, 5 tackles. When we did our top 24 show, we highlighted both of these folks as players we expected to jump back into the top 24 this year, and they are on that trajectory. There's another name of interest with Harrison Phillips being traded, Jalen Redmond. We don't want to chase him, folks, but we want to watch. With this defense, with Allen and Hargrave flanking him on each side, Redmond in week 2 had a six tackle line with a sack and 2 tackles for loss on 58% of the sacks, 58% of the snaps. Sorry, folks. He's on our watch list, but we're not picking him up, right, Shawn?
Yeah, it's going to be up and down for him. I'm afraid it's hard to trust production wise.
Okay. The Bears had another blowout, and to the Lions, and so we got to be careful about our takeaways on this. But there are a few things we do want to take away. First thing, T.J. Edwards re-hurt his hamstring after 30 snaps, which was about half the snaps. They played 59 in total, did the Bears. Noah Sewell, just like he did in week 1 playing in Edwards' spot when Edwards was out, Noah Sewell jumped in, played 60% of the snaps and got 5 tackles. Tremaine Edmonds continued to wear the green dot, played 100% of the snaps and had 7 tackles. It's not Ruben Hippolyte, folks. Edwards is expected to miss some time. Hopefully you hung on to Sewell if you picked him up, but if someone picked him up and then dropped him, he's worth grabbing for if you need someone for 3 or 4 weeks for sure, or at least a couple weeks. Edwards hasn't been put on injured reserve yet, but at least for the next couple of weeks, I expect that we'll see Noah Sewell out there. Jaquan Brisker and Byard both basically played 100%. Brisker played 56% of the snaps deep. Byard played 59% of the snaps deep. Brisker had a much more tantalizing line with 9 total tackles. Byard had 4 total tackles. Byard is only averaging 4.5 tackles per game. He's one at this point in time. I think I'm okay dropping in league, Shawn. He being Byard.
Yeah, given his age and just the lack of production here, I'm fine with that. Unless Brisker gets hurt, that's when Byard would pick back up. But we know Brisker is fantastic. It's just staying healthy has been his only problem. But yeah, for now, Byard's a good cut.
Yep. Collard Garden was inactive again with that hamstring. Very disappointing. My chances of that one hitting as the number 1 cornerback this year in total points has faded, but I'm still holding out hope that when he starts playing, he'll be number 1 in fantasy points per game at cornerback.
For both games he plays.
But we shall see. But he needs to get on the field to make that happen. We do not want Nick McLeod, as a side note, who's playing the slot in his absence. Jalen Johnson, for those that might have him for whatever reason from a cornerback perspective, he left the game hurt again. There's a chance this one is season ending, that he might have to have surgery on that groin. Nashawn Wright replaced him. Of course, Nashawn Wright had the pick 6 in week 1, but don't go chasing Nashawn Wright. On the defensive line, I mentioned Dale Odeigbo earlier in the show. A lot of fab money went after him after that first week, and boy, he jumped up to 80% of the snaps this week. Fantastic. He had 2 assisted tackles. Montez Sweat continues to disappoint with 66% of the snaps. He did at least have 4 tackles this week, but he doesn't have a sack yet this year.
He had one called back.
He did. I did not see that.
He had it, but it was nullified by penalty. So almost got it officially for us, but it's a positive side that he is getting back there.
All right, for all the old folks out there that like me, that remember the show Hee Haw, gloom, despair, and agony on me. Hopefully, if y'all know the rest of that Hee Haw song, let us know on that AP Plus YouTube channel. If you're about my age, you might know that. Okay, moving on to the Saints, who played 71 snaps against the 49ers. Demario Davis, 100%. Pete Werner, 89%. Love Demario Davis' productivity. I knew he would do well in this new Staley system. Had him having 11 combined tackles, even for his age, is great. Pete Werner, I was expecting a little bit more this week. Only had 5 tackles, but at least he had a tackle for loss, a couple pass defenses, which was nice. I alluded to this earlier. Let's talk about the Saints safeties. Justin Reed and Giannis Senker played basically 100% of the snaps. Julian Blackman went on injured reserve. 5 minutes before the kickoff, I went and got Senker, and I dropped to Xavier Hutchinson, a deep wide receiver I had on one of my dynasty teams. And I'm so glad I did. I didn't play him, but it was just one of those things. I wanted to be proactive because I figured if he was successful, it was going to cost me a lot more on the back end. And sure enough, he had 8 tackles, 5 of which were solo. So he definitely played ahead of Howden. He played every single snap. Not worried about him coming off the field. I think they're going to try and play more of these younger guys. I wouldn't be surprised at some point if Stutzman somehow gets on the field as well at the linebacker spot. So someone in deep leagues, if you can stash them, do that, because there's going to be a time before the end of the year. Great news on Alontae Taylor's as we go into the secondary a little bit further at the cornerback spot. Last week he only played 55% of the snaps. This week he played 100%. I'm guessing that he only played 55% in week 1 because he was coming off of that injury. And Kool-Aid McKinstry and Isaac Yiadom, however you say his name, Yiadom, whatever, they played 100% of the snaps in week 1 on the outside. This week, Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid played 100% of the snaps, with Alontae moving inside to the slot when they went to 3 cornerbacks. So Yiadom, however you say his name, my apologies to him if he happens to have a family member listening. He only played 54% of the snaps. Now, what's interesting is he had 7 tackles. So Yiadom is a guy that they're going to attack when he's on the field. So, but if he's only playing 54% of the snaps, Alontae Taylor 55% last week, probably not enough that we want to take that chance. Like with a Jalen Jones last week, who was getting picked on all the time, but he was still playing 100% of the snaps. Carl freaking Granderson having a monster year, probably top 5 for defensive MVP for the league right now. 82% of the snaps, 7 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits. That's 3.5 sacks through 2 games for him, averaging 6.5 tackles per game. Now, he's averaging 84% snaps over the 2 games. Chase Young has been inactive. But when he's playing like that, I don't know how much they're going to reduce that percentage of snaps right now. Cam Jordan plays 72% of the snaps. Chris Rump, third edge, with Chase Young being out, played 34% of the snaps. Cam Jordan returned to earth, only having 1 tackle after having that great week 1. And I love Cam Jordan as a loyal Saints fan. But that's the scoop on him. As a side note, Justin Reed played 48% deep. Giannis Senker played 59% deep. So just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. But 59% deep is a lot better than 78, 82, et cetera, as some of the others we've talked about today. Moving to the Falcons. Oh, and I fixed it. All right, good. They only play 47 snaps in defense. And just like we talked about last week, that is unusually low when you get into your 45s, your 47s. So be careful about what we walk away here with. But I have to admit, I am concerned about Caden Ellis because I saw him playing a lot on the edge. And my apologies to the audience, I forgot to check how much of his snaps were on the edge versus the box, but there was a lot on the edge against the Vikings as they were trying to generate this pass rush. Now, the announcers were making such a big deal about the Falcons' pass rush, but this was against the Vikings, who were down their starting left tackle, their backup left tackle, their center, and I think one of their guards left the game as well. So let's not get too excited about this Falcons pass rush as a side note, but Ellis with only 4 tackles, Diablo with only 4 tackles. The one thing I can say, at least Diablo also got a fumble recovery, a pass defense, and he played 100% of the snaps again. So good for Diablo. We're going to have to watch Ellis carefully. And if this trend of him playing on the edge continues, we may be giving you hints to try and trade him before this goes too far along. Bates and Watts played 100% of the snaps with basically very little productivity. Watts was saved by an interception. Billy Bowman, 94% of the snaps. only 4 tackles, almost all he played almost everything in the slot or in the box. He did get that interception along with one other pass defense, but boy, the numbers are just low all across the board for the Falcons. The one exception, Zach Harrison played 57% of the snaps. He had 5 tackles, 1.5 sacks, but we're not chasing Zach Harrison, are we, Shawn?
I am not. Just a weird game, especially like I say with the low tackles and everything that could go wrong for Minnesota was going wrong, injury wise on that line. So yeah, don't chase this. Too much of a rotation there anyway.
Yeah, so we're not chasing Zach Harrison, and we're not panicking yet over all these other stat lines because none of these other folks, had more than 4 tackles. The one thing I will mention also on Jalen Walker, he played 47% of the snaps this week versus 36 by James Pierce, which was the second week in a row he's played a little bit more than Jalen Pierce. Of his snaps, he being Jalen Walker, he played every one of those along the defensive line on the edge. None of them as an off-ball linebacker. So that's how they used him. So great that he got a couple of tackles, including 1 sack, but don't expect too much from Jalen Walker, folks. Let's move to the Bucks, who played only 49 snaps themselves against the Texans, as the Texans offense really, really struggled last night. A few things we want to call out here. Levante David played 100% of the snaps, but his tackle efficiency just continues to trend downward. Granted, it was only 49 snaps, but only 2 tackles, of which only 1 was solo, saved by half a sack in a pass defense. But Levante David is someone I think we're looking to move off of potentially, Shawn. At least I am.
Yeah, he's not off to a good start here with his age and everything. It's was wondering how soon that would catch up with him, and right now it looks like it's caught him pretty quick this season.
Yeah,
So,
and I think because he's a veteran staying on the field. Now, the other thing I was a little bit concerned about is I was watching late in the game, and Servasia Dennis, who had played pretty much every snap to that point, he played 86% of the snaps. As it turned out, Deion Jones played, I think, the final 6 snaps on defense. It's only 12%. He got a couple tackles, but I was a little bit nervous seeing him on the field late in the game. Was that because Servasia was nicked up? Hadn't heard anything. Was it because Servasia was struggling in pass coverage and they felt a little bit better with the veteran against Houston that late in the game? Maybe that's the case. But Servasia Dennis, we want to pay attention to reports here. And once again, in these deeper leagues or leagues that might be hurting, we told you at the beginning, we give you a lot of different names to consider. Deion Jones is another one of those names to consider in very deep leagues if you have a spot at the end of your bench, whether it be because of Levante Davis' poor play, whether it be because Servasia Dennis, they want to go with someone more veteran, just something to keep an eye on. Shawn?
I was looking to see if he got hurt, um, or if they did in fact bench him. And I know there was a radio station earlier today that was calling for them to bench him after he, in their eyes, was so terrible on the field. So yeah, I'm a little nervous. The more I think about it, definitely something to have to look out for.
He's someone, if I have other options, I'm not putting into my lineup here in week 3.
I don't
So,
blame I don't blame
yep,
you a bit. That's something I'm going to look after as much as I can. Like I said, I was looking for an injury because I did think he got banged up one time, but that may have been earlier in the game too. So, uh, but to be on the money downs, I guess you want to call it there at the end of the game, to not be on the field, that's a bit telling.
exactly right. So Tyke Smith and Antoine Winfield both played 100% of the snaps. Tyke Smith only played 33% deep. Winfield played 67%, a little bit better than 74% the week before. But boy, not feeling good about Winfield with that continued deep utilization. He is talented. We talked about like a Jalen Hawkins and all, and Winfield has been known to make big plays, but right now it's just not there, folks. Be careful. Jacob Parrish is their slot cornerback, but he only played 61% of the snaps this week, and that's why he only had 1 tackle. On the edge side of things, Diaby 82%, Reddick 84%. boy, Diaby, he's chasing, he's running, but he's just not getting those sacks. He's just not able to finish. I'm hoping that light goes on. I'm still keeping him in the dynasty league where I have him, but boy, it's getting harder and harder when the sacks just aren't happening. And lastly, unfortunately, people may not have heard, but Kalijah Cansey did end up in a situation where he will need to have surgery that will result in him missing the rest of the year. Greg Gaines and Elijah Roberts are the two that will be replacing him. Gaines is just a guy, for lack of a better term, folks. Elijah Roberts is a rookie that I'm excited about. It was during draft season, but we're not picking him up. We're going to watch from afar. Moving on to the Panthers. We said we come back to Trevin Wallace and the Panthers. So Christian Rosen played 100% of the snaps. They only played 55 snaps in total, so a very low amount. He had 7 tackles. He's averaging 7.5 a game. That's what we expect from Christian Roseboom. Trevin Wallace only played 76% of the snaps. He played 86% in week 1, so that's another drop, or a drop, I should say. And he's averaging a whopping 4 tackles per game. I think we'd be okay with letting Trevin Wallace go at this point, Shawn.
Yeah, surely there's something better out there.
Yeah. I love the way you said that. Trevin Moehrig played 100% of the snaps. Nick Scott, 98%. Moehrig is averaging 10 tackles a game. Nick Scott, 4 tackles a game. Now, the great news for Moehrig is he's playing 89% close to the line of scrimmage. Nick Scott played 78% deep this week after 94% the week before. Lathan Ransom did get 12 snaps this week. He had 9 in week 1. All 12 of his snaps were deep, which happens to be the position that Nick Scott plays. This still feels like a matter of time, as we talked about last week. If you want to get ahead of the curve, but at some point, get him before you have to play a lot more fab dollars. You probably get him for $1 or $0 or whatever, depending on your fab system, and stick him on your bench. We don't have too many safeties on your bench, but Ransom is a great tackler from college and could be worth something. Shawn I don't know if you agree with me on that, Shawn.
I'm not a big Nick Scott guy, so anybody else would be great. And
Nick
the Panthers
Scott,
are going to be on the field a lot on defense. That offense has not taken off like we were told to believe by a lot of people. It's not looked good, so that defense is on the field a lot.
well, yeah, and there's talk that Bryce Young started figuring it out in the second half. I think what happened is Arizona had already started packing their bags that they had that game won.
Let them prop their feet up on the bench. They were done.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the only reason Carolina came back. I'm not expecting a repeat of what we saw this past week in the second half for Carolina on offense. On the edge side of things, Wanham 69%, Jones 89%, up from his 62%, Scorton up to 40%, Princely Umanamilian up to 24%. So Jones, Squirton, Umanamilian went up. GJ Wanham snaps went down slightly. They were trying to generate pressure in different ways, removing some of the defensive tackles or interior defensive linemen, I'll call it. But still, not a whole lot. Over 2 weeks as a team, they have only 1 sack and 5 quarterback hits. Not very good. So they're going to struggle to put up points. Shaw Smith-Waite continues to be their slot cornerback, but he is doing nothing from a productivity perspective. And even though he plays a slot, we are not touching him. Moving to the NFC West in our last division. Warner, 100% of the snaps. D. Winters, 97% of the snaps. Warner's averaging 9.5 tackles per game, which is fantastic. He did also get a fumble recovery. He also had a pass defense and a tackle for loss, along with his 11 tackles total. Fred Warner looking really, really good. D. Winters, not bad either. Would take the 8 tackles. Would like a little bit more when he's playing 97% of the snaps, but not bad overall. The safety position, Jason Pinnock and Marquise Siegel both played 100% of the snaps. Siegel's averaging only 5.5 tackles per game. Part of the reason he is, this past week, he only played 41% of the snaps deep. Pinnock played 59% of the snaps deep. Remember last week I said I didn't quite trust the numbers. These feel more in line with what I was seeing during the game. So Even though Siegel only had 5 tackles, feeling a little bit better than in terms of his utilization than I would be Pinnock right now. Upton Stout, 79% of the snaps as a nickel cornerback, 5 tackles, and also added a sack to that. Week 1, he didn't do much, but he only played 56% of the snaps. Shawn, we want those slot cornerbacks to be playing against teams that play a lot of 3 wide, correct? As a reminder to
Absolutely.
folks.
Absolutely. That's when they produce. If it's not 3 wide, they are on the bench.
Yeah. So Nick Bosa, 83% of the snaps, 9 tackles, including a sack and a couple of quarterback hits. Another one that's off to an incredible start to the season. Mikael Williams, while his snap count was down a little bit to 68%, came through with 5 tackles and a couple of tackles for loss. Now, it was against the Saints, so let's just keep everything in perspective.
Don't chase
Lastly,
it yet.
don't chase it quite yet, folks. Don't stick him in your lineup quite yet. Bryce Huff actually had 4 tackles and a sack, which was great for Bryce Huff. Reunited under Robert Saleh, where he had his best year when he was a New York Jet, but he only played 39% of the snaps, which was down from 50% the week before when he didn't do basically anything. So we're watching big play leagues. If his snap count goes up, maybe something in big play leagues that doesn't have a heavy scoring for tackles, we might be interested in, but not something we're touching right now, right, Shawn?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a cool sentiment for them to be back together, but yeah, nothing I'm chasing. I do want to point out Diamador Lenore, cornerback, who has been the nickel over the past couple years, has moved outside pretty much full time. So he's not putting up the numbers we've seen in the past, and I still see him being started in a lot of leagues. So make sure you know that and to get off him and find someone else, Upton Stout or some other corner. But he's not giving us the numbers like he has in the past.
Yep, Lenore is one we can move on from as well, but based on that usage. Great call out, Shawn. Moving to the Seahawks, who played 62 snaps. Ernest Jones played 100% of snaps. He's averaging 9 tackles a game. Fantastic. Tyrese Knight down from 74% down to 69% of the snaps. He did have 8 tackles on only 43 snaps, which is great, but boy, that doesn't feel sustainable, Shawn.
Nah, that's playing out of your mind. That's same concerns with Ivan Pace. They have to tackle way above their snap percentages, and it's hard to sustain that for the entire season. So we're probably going to see a lot of 4 and 5 tackle games out of him.
And then moving on to the secondary real quick, Julian Love and Kobe Bryant both played 100% of the snaps. Kobe Bryant played 85% deep after 82% week 1. Julian Love, similar to week 1, he had about 60% deep. And this is showing up in their numbers. Now, Julian Love has tended to be productive even when he plays this 60% deep, but just something to keep an eye on right now. We love Julian Love. See what I did there? But
We
we need
love
to
Julian. Yeah.
we love it when he produces, and hopefully this is just a 1 week outlier. Around the edge, on the edge side of things, Uchenna Nwosu returned. He only played 26% of the snaps, so he eased his way back in. They're easing him back in. Maffei's snap count dropped a little bit from 74% to 68%. DeMarcus Lawrence went from 68 to 55%. Derek Hall stayed roughly flat. And so it would appear that Maffei and Lawrence were the 2 that were impacted the most by Nwosu. And if he grows in snaps, we could see both of those guys come down, and we might see all these guys roughly in the 50% range by the time it's all said and done, which won't be good for edge production.
No, it's a mess right now. I really wish they would get off Nwosu. Dude can't stay healthy. I want to see Derek Hall get a full share, a full starter share, and really see what he can do. He flashed at times last year when he was given the start, given the extra playing time. He looked really good, was getting the sacks and the production. For whatever reason, they've been stubborn about letting him take on that full time role, though.
Yeah. So far, Derek Hall though only is averaging 1 tackle per game,
Mm.
and he does have 4 quarterback hits in the 2 games. He hasn't translated that to a sack yet. So, but I wouldn't mind seeing Nick Hall getting more. Derek Hall one of those icks out there. Derek Hall getting more time. Of course, Iman has the ankle injury, did not play. There's a little bit chatter coming from the coach that maybe he'll play sooner than expected. I'm not betting on week 3, to be honest with you, but it sounds like week 4 might be a possibility for Iman. But even with that, based on his utilization that we're seeing the preseason, we don't want to stick him into our lineups right away. We want to see how he's going to be used. Moving to the Rams, who played 66 snaps. Nate Landman played 97% of the snaps, and he had a Nate Landman line of 8 tackles, 4 solo, 4 assisted. He's averaging 9 tackles a game, which is fantastic, and he did have a fumble recovery after forcing a fumble in week 1. Omar Spates, the number 2 linebacker, only played 62% of the snaps, averaging 4 tackles per game. That 62% is down from the 71%. What was interesting is that Reeder and Dolak, neither one of them played even when it got later in the game and they kind of extended the lead. It was Landman and Spates, and not really much of Spates. So anyway, Spates is another one that there was some hope for, but I don't think we're playing him, and I think we can feel comfortable letting him go for others, similar to what we're talking about with Trevin Wallace and Tyrese Knight and so forth.
Yeah, there's nothing there. If he's not giving me the stats, I don't need him on my team.
All right. Moving to the secondary, Cam Curl played 100%. And once again, another productive game for Cam Curl. He's averaging 8.5 tackles per game now for the year, including getting a sack this past week. And he's playing about 60% deep. Do you think this trend for Cam Curl can continue? This is 2 weeks in a row of great productivity with about 60% deep.
Yeah, this is what we expected last year, or what we were hoping that we'd get the Cam Curl from Washington, and it never manifested. And this is what we've wanted, and I'm picking him up where I can. I'm buying in.
I'm bought in as well. I'm with you as well. Unfortunately, most of the leagues, I guess I was a little bit slow to pushing the button because I don't think he's available in any of my leagues right now. Cam Kinchins led the team in tackles with 10, got a pass defense. He played 88% of the snaps. The week before, he played 90% of the snaps. So now he played 67% deep this week after being 86% deep the week before. I think some of this is a result of playing the Titans and a rookie quarterback in Cam Ward and not really being threatened. So as happy as I am that Kinchins was productive, I don't think I'm ready to chase that right now.
No, we expect Kitchens to be more of a ball hawk, low tackle numbers, playing that deep and everything. This feels like an outlier. I'm with you on that.
Quentin Lake played 100% of the snaps, but he's just not giving us much. 5 tackles. He did get 1 pass defense. I have a long pass moved past Quentin Lake. There's a lot more safeties on the field. I was about to say fish in the sea, and then I tried to change it to a quick analogy. So we'll go with safeties on the field instead of fish in the sea. I didn't realize that Quentin Lake. See, got it. All right, we'll move on. All right, just seeing who's still awake from our audience. Moving to the edge, and boy, I found some interesting numbers, Shawn. Jared Verse played 90% of snaps in week 1. He was down to 65% in week 2. He has no sacks yet. He does have 3 quarterback hits, but he's only averaging 2.5 tackles per game. Byron Young, on the other hand, is averaging 7 tackles per game and has 3 sacks year to date. Wow. I thought Jared Verse, and I even said it, that we'd be talking with him in lines with the Max Crosbys and TJ Watts and Nick Bosa's when we got to the end of the year. Now it's only 2 weeks. Is my look into the crystal ball going to change?
If I'm not mistaken, back on our top 24 repeaters and non-repeaters, I took Jared Verse off.
You sure did.
And it was because he could get the tackles, but he was lacking in the sacks. And that was a bit of my concern. I'm not really sure what's up with this rotation. It does have me concerned here. Maybe there's an injury we don't know about, or something else weird is happening here. This was a fantastic matchup. I put money on him to get sacks this weekend because against the Titans, that's where I'm putting my money. is edge rushers to get sacks. I also put money on Kobe Turner and Byron Young, so they bailed me out there too. But it's definitely odd. It's not what we thought we'd get this season. We're expecting a jump here, similar to like a Will Anderson jump or something. But yeah, we'll do some digging.
Not giving up on him yet, but he
Not
might be
giving up.
someone
Nervous.
with that drop from 90 to 65%. You wonder if there's some sort of injury they're not telling us about as well. So
Yeah.
I might stash him on the bench for now if I have someone else, particularly if I have a great matchup like against the Titans offensive tackles. To your point, Josiah Stewart was up from 24 to 38% of snaps. Nick Hampton up from 2 to 23%. So something's just not quite right there. Braden Fisk, once again, no word of any injury that I saw. Maybe you did in your notes, but he only played 13 snaps, which was 20% of the snaps,
That's
and
wow.
he put up a goose egg. So until we know more, folks, let's not release Fisk, particularly in a defensive tackle required league, but let's put him on the bench until we know more. Okay, so let's watch the injury reports this week. Moving to the Cardinals, who played 85 snaps against the Panthers. 85 snaps. Mac Wilson played 100% of those snaps. 85 snaps. Roquan Smith had 15 tackles on 85 snaps. You know what Mac had? About half. Slightly more than half. He
Just
had
a guy.
eight tackles. He did get a pass defense. He did get a quarterback hit. That's his exact line from week one. But that was when they had 75 snaps that he played. So that's just not great productivity. Now, he can get you that all year. It's the Kaiser White kind of line, for lack of a better term, as long as he's going to be playing 100% of the snaps. Now, Akeem Davis Gaither played 62% of the snaps. He's averaging 7 tackles a game. Last week, he only played 37% of the snaps. So, but he didn't take anything away from Mac. He had 6 tackles. Still, we can't play Akeem Davis Gaither on 62% of the snaps, right, Shawn?
No, no. Again, there's got to be somebody out there.
Yeah. That was another one of those softballs, folks.
Yeah.
Okay, at the safety position, Buda Baker and Jalen Thompson both played 100% of the snaps. Once again, I wish Baker would have had more tackles. He is averaging 9 tackles on the year, but so is Jalen Thompson averaging 9 tackles per game. And what's interesting is Jalen Thompson is playing less free safety than Buda Baker. Buda this past week was at 41%. Jalen Thompson was at 31%. Once again, this was against the Panthers, so we want to be careful about jumping too far on that. But Jalen Thompson over 2 games averaging 9 tackles, granted Saints and the Panthers. Okay, let's keep that in mind. But someone to keep an eye on, Jalen Thompson. Okay, I've said his name enough. The Cardinals, love what Garrett Williams was doing. He played 72 snaps, which was 85%. Unfortunately, he got injured, but before that, he had 7 tackles in the pass defense. But also, Max Melton got hurt and left the game. I believe he was carted off. Will Johnson got hurt late in the game. Garrett Williams got hurt. They were running basically out of cornerbacks. They already have Sean Murphy Bunting on IR. They have Starling Thomas on IR. I mean, they are, depending on what happens with these 3, those cornerbacks could be really hurting. So if I can't remember who's playing Arizona this week from an offensive perspective. But if these guys are out or hurting, get your wide receivers giddy up, baby, for those wide receivers against Arizona this coming week if all these cornerbacks are out. On the edge side of things, they basically all played right around 50%. 50%. Sweat 49, Savin Collins 48, Baron Browning 48, Jordan Birch 51. Jordan Birch played the most snaps of any of those edge players. Josh Sweat dropped from 63% to 49% from week 1 to week 2, which was interesting. Now, Savin Collins did get a cheap fumble recovery and a touchdown, which was fantastic. But we're not chasing it. Even though he had 5 tackles last week, he only had 1 this week. Don't let those big plays, don't go chasing them. Jordan Birch went up from 37% to 51% week over week, Shawn. Taxi squad stash for the rookie?
Yeah, I think so. I believe it was John Macri that had tweeted out some of his win rates and whatnot, and I believe they led the team. And he was kind of talked about very well in the preseason there too. So Somebody I want to look into and hold on to in Taxi Squad for sure. Redrafts, you can't do anything with him right now, but interesting to see how this turns out, especially with this new rotation. I don't think this is a 1 week thing. I believe this is going to be a rotation going forward, closer to 50% of the snaps for all these guys.
Yeah, Birch was a 5-star out of high school. He was out of South Carolina. I remember it because he and LSU and South Carolina were recruiting heavily against each other for him, and he chose to stay home at that particular time before he transferred to Oregon. So anyway, he's got the athletic pedigree. I'll leave it at that. All right, that finally wraps up all 32 teams, folks. Shawn, any quick closing thoughts?
We beat our time. We shaved 6 minutes off. You're welcome, folks.
Ricky has to wrap it up still. So let me wrap it up real fast. If you like this show, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe to the channel as well. If you have comments, suggestions, etc., please add them to the YouTube channel. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Shawn and I will go in and check them out. Give me a follow at RickyRod66 on X and Shawn at Shawn8386. With that, we will have our start sit show Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central Time. And we'll be talking about week 3, and we'll be helping you with your start sits there. So on behalf of Shawn Teague, we'll look forward to seeing you all Sunday morning. This is Ricky Roderick wishing you, your family, and your friends great health and happiness. Be kind to one another, and we are out of here till Sunday morning.